Hello everybody, welcome to the next spells video. Today we are looking at water spells. So this is going to be every single generic water spell in Dominions 5. And I'm joined by a couple people this time, actually, if you would like to introduce yourselves.
Folks, this is Maryland. Lots of people know me. I've been around a long time. Anyways, thanks for inviting me to this collaborative bit of video.
Oh, of
And I
course.
think we'll have some interesting things to say about this. I actually like water, so I play quite a lot of nations with water.
Oh, I see. I don't like water.
Well, I'm not saying I like to play underwater that much, but I like water magic.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
And I'm back from the other video, RCK. I was in the air video. So we're going to go over arguably the best magic
Oh
path
my
in the
god.
game today.
I
I
have
wouldn't
two.
say that, but I enjoy playing it.
No, definitely not. Fuck no. Definitely not.
I see. Okay. Well, on screen I have all the water battle summons. So going by school, the first summon is summon lesser water elemental. Um, this guy, I mean, like all the lesser elementals are just kind of expensive on gems for what you get, but if you need to
Mhm.
cast this guy, I mean,
Well, it's a case of
he's
um, one of my comments about using lesser elementals is there's a whole bunch of low-lying easy research at Conjuration 3. So
mm,
there's a bunch of reasons to go there. There's the power spells, water power, earth power, and then you get the elementals along with it. So, as an early rush, it's a good early rush target.
Mhm.
The level 5, where you get, as you've got there, the bigger elemental, that takes quite a bit more research, and you might not be able to get there in time for, say, a turn 10 or something rush, but you might be able to get these guys, and they might do the difference.
sure. Yeah, I mean, on their own, water elementals are pretty good. I mean, the size 3 ones kind of suffer by having not as many crush attacks that they can make, only
Yeah,
doing
and a
2.
lot less hit points, but
Yeah.
the regen in water is insane.
Oh, of course. Yes. I guess, just, yeah, so a lot of water spells, unfortunately, are, either, like, completely restricted to only being castable underwater, or in the case of water elemental, they are like water elemental is a super powerful spell if you are underwater because these
Right.
guys have regeneration.
Yeah.
And of course, as you say, having more HP is going to make that regen even stronger. So, yeah, I mean, these guys are
And
okay.
and actually, I do want to add that they changed from being the regeneration changed from being on land to being underwater. On land, it's just 10%. Underwater, it's 20%.
Mm,
Right. And one more comment. They are a great emergency thing for your Water 1 lab rats or
Yes,
your junky Water 1 magi to rush out and cast.
I definitely agree with that.
So, I mean, if you're sitting there and, you've got an early fight and you've got a little bit of research and some gems, throwing up 10 researchers, throwing one of these out each, that's 10 gems, but it provides you a whole big front line. Might save your good troops.
sure. A well, I suppose the 4 elemental magic paths all have a way of boosting their level by once at
Yeah,
Conjuration 2 or 3. But, I mean, Earth and Fire, they don't have to do anything special. There's no condition. Air, they have to be in a storm, which, of course, you're going to find storms on land. You're going to be the one casting them. But with water, the only way you can get that point boost is if you're actually underwater,
that's correct.
which is a unfortunate
Mhm.
condition that is very punishing for a lot of water
Yeah.
mages. It'll make water ones like really great underwater, but if they're not underwater, it's a lot more painful.
Well, that is a popular thing with people that have tried to rebalance water and modding,
Mm,
is change that up. Just a,
Mm.
I know we're talking vanilla, but that's just a comment.
oh, sure, sure.
Now, I
Uh,
will say that even though yes, it's very it does suck that they can only up their path level underwater. Yes, that's a big thing. But you have to also keep in mind that their items, their boosting items, are very very cheap. Like the
Sure.
water ring
Yes,
uh, is that Conjuration 6, but it's only takes a
it's
water
just
one to make.
construction 6, but requires only water 1 to make.
Yeah.
So yes, the
Yeah.
research to it is high, but the cost is really cheap. Um, a comment I was going to make here, and you might want to bring them up. The alternate form in Cold Dominion in
Oh,
Cold
sure.
Temp is the ice, and the general
Yes.
consensus is that they're not nearly as good.
Mm, I agree.
These size
I
3
mean,
ones.
they get trampling, but they don't get anywhere near the attacks.
Yeah, they don't have the
so,
regen either.
so most of the time, water elementals, if you cast them in cold, they're not as good. Not
Yeah,
as good.
because when you try to summon Water Elemental, they're just going to pop out as an ice
Yeah, you don't
guy.
have control over that except picking where you fight.
I mean, maybe they can help you out a little bit having that cold aura if you're planning something like a grip of winter fatigue thing going
Yeah,
on and you're
yeah.
already in cold 3. But other than that, I'd rather have a water elemental.
Of course.
That's
Yeah.
that's the typical consensus. The other comment about regular water elementals is the little bit of fire resist can be quite helpful,
Hmm.
Mm,
Sure.
but they don't
Yeah.
have cold resist. Isn't that the funniest thing?
yeah.
Well, I think it's safe to say Summon Lesser Water Elemental is like a fine emergency button, but
Hmm.
otherwise it's not.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you want full size.
yeah. If you can pull it off.
At Conjuration 4, you can summon a School of Sharks. You get 10 of these plus. So some extras if you're a big water mage.
Mm.
Yeah, the scaling is quite good on them. I mean, they're chaff, but if you need to fill if you need to fill the battle and save
Hmm.
your good guys, it's cheap. It's a cheap solution.
I
I
guess
mean, when I see it, I almost think it's like an underwater swarm. You
yeah,
know?
Yeah,
yeah.
it is. Although, I mean, if you use underwater swarm,
Yeah,
you get the shrimps and
yeah.
Well, it's Conjuration 4. It's only water too. I guess yeah, every water mage in the game could cast this spell is
pretty
a
much,
benefit
pretty much. Yeah,
given that this is a spell only usable underwater.
but compared to its big brother, a thing to note here, because they are an instant summon like water elementals, if the
Hmm.
mage casting them dies, they don't disappear.
Hmm.
You have to have some leadership, but and they're not a magic being, so you don't need fancy
Hmm.
leadership. I
I
don't see them used a lot. The plain school of sharks, I don't see used a lot.
sure. Yeah.
Its big brother is a different thing entirely.
Only with 2 HP and 0 protection, these things will like eat one hit if they
Yeah.
dodge it, I guess.
Hmm.
Well, and no poison resist, and there's so much poison weapons in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as you say, it's like it's a good screen, but that's really all it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And at 100 fatigue, that's kind of punishing if this is like a water 2
Well,
mage.
it's a gem spell. I
Sure.
mean, all gem spells, that's the issue. But if you're water two already, um, you're only taking half that.
Right, right. If
No,
you're
no, sorry. If you're water three,
yeah,
Yeah.
I got what you meant. If you boosted once.
yeah. If you boost and water power, you're definitely going to be wanting to. If you're underwater, and that's the only place you'll use that spell, you're going to be casting summon water power.
Mhm.
Oh no, I missed a step. So
You
at
get lots of
Conjuration
step.
5, you get the most powerful water spell in the game. The most important spell to win any war underwater.
Underwater, yeah, I wouldn't call
Yeah.
it the most powerful water spell in the game. I'll reserve that to one we're getting to later.
Uh,
But underwater,
Most
yes.
popular underwater, or most popular water spell, perhaps.
Well, yeah, definitely
Maybe.
that. Yeah, and in underwater battles, it's very dominant.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
also a pretty good thug killer. Those four crush attacks with pretty decent statistics can eat thugs
Yeah, I mean, this unit has
on land or in the water.
it's a super great wall that will like kill human troops effortlessly.
Yeah, in the series I'm working on right now, I was the Malba, and I use them to eat Knights of the Chalice.
Hmm.
I mean, it takes a lot of them, but they will kill them. They're one of the only things I had that would kill the Knights of the Chalice.
I think in a vacuum, the water elemental is the most powerful, just generally, of the
Is
six, I guess, if you include
is there?
like the blood guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Of oh, of the elementals,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a bit situational. I mean, there's a couple advantages. Air elementals are ethereal and fly, and then
sure.
fire are ethereal.
I was just
So if you're trying
speaking
to get through walls, but as
in a
far as
vacuum.
their literal just smacking around people power, yes.
Were you going to say something, RCK?
I mean, normally you would see a lot of underwater nations rush Conjuration 5 just for this. And of course, there's other things in it that we'll go over. That's also at Conjuration 5. But and then you'll kind of see that point where they'll transition to just almost you'll just see it's just water element it's a water elemental work and who can throw the most water elementals at the other person and win.
That's
Um
right.
Mm,
It can really degenerate. That's one of the complaints about
yeah.
the underwater implementation is that it's kind of dull. It's who has the most water gems.
Hmm.
um, but I think suffice to say, summon water elemental is a S plus spell.
Yes.
Hmm.
It's it's
Absolutely.
it's I would say mandatory. If
Well, and a comment that, like, when people talk about thugs, there's a type of thug that all of the elemental paths can use, and that is a simple mage that with a gem. Two of those can take most PD
sure,
of any
Mm-hmm.
elemental type, and so that's a cheap raid. You know, a couple water twos, or earth twos, or fire twos, or whatever.
Hmm.
Any of the relatively inexpensive low level elemental magi can become raid squads.
yeah, like as you said, one or two elementals will just kill any PD.
Yes.
Well, okay,
Definitely.
Yeah,
a reasonable amount of PD that you could
yeah,
expect.
it depends on what it is.
Yeah.
And at Conjuration 6, you can cast Shark Attack. Oh no, I closed the small shark.
Well, it's okay. Well, the really important thing to note about Shark Attack is it is a battlefield enchantment, which
Hmm.
means you have to keep that caster alive. It shows up as an icon on the battle.
Right, right. But as long as this spell is cast, you're gonna have both of these sharks just show
Hmm.
up on the battlefield. So I guess it's like
Right.
Howl in that way.
And as by the note, you get more of them the more beings or anything living is wounded.
Yes.
That's an important implication, though. They're not very good against undead.
Hmm.
But it's good if the undead cast them.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, typically, if I'm in a water battle, I will put up Shark Attack, make some elementals, and then we'll get to the buffs and buff like crazy.
Sure.
Because the sharks show up on both sides, don't they?
They will even, I think, if I
It's kind of
remember
like
the
that. It's
last
kind of like
one,
Hal.
they'll show up inside the fort a bit too.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. Howl doesn't usually show up in the fort much.
Gotcha. But yeah, very. I think it's a very good battlefield spell to put up, especially
It
if
is.
you can do it. There's really no reason not to.
That's right.
Sure.
Although, given how many times water nations are just simply banned, it's not as
True.
important as it used to be.
True.
I agree. Every time you can cast Shark Attack, you should. You can only cast Shark Attack underwater, obviously.
Right.
So I think this spell sucks. I mean, when you can use it, yeah, you're totally right. But it's just you can't use it like 80% of the game. So,
Well, I mean, that depends a great deal. I
okay,
actually
sure,
have
sure.
posted games where I have, very much encouraged bring a water nation.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We'll use a map that makes it a bit fair, and because thematically there's a number of the water nations I'm very fond of, particularly all of the Rilliers. I
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
really like them thematically, but I agree with the complaints about, there's an interaction problem with playing with water nations.
We played a teams of three. It was a disciples game. There was a lot of people in it, but I played with a team of Ermor, Therados, and Lemuria. I was Lemuria, and there was
Oh, oh,
six six. God, I wish I had. I'll have to check if I still have this game saved. But there was was it six nations were underwater, or was it three teams or two teams that were underwater teams? It was like a full relay team, a full Atlantis team, and I almost want to say there was one more team. But
oh, so it
I'm
was one of those all ages, and you
yeah,
take, yeah, yeah. So
yeah,
you took
that
the
yeah,
undead Greek
that
stuff
was fun. That was
or
fun.
Roman.
And I literally played like the entire game underwater almost because
Yeah,
like Therados was on our team too, but I was Lemuria, and like we killed Relay, and we almost took out all of Atlantis before the game was over. That was
yeah,
fun.
that would be cool. So,
and at Conjuration 7, you can get this guy again. Except now you summon four of them for 2 gems. Cost you
well, four
200.
plus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
200 fatigue, and that's all the caster will be using for the rest of battle. Unless, of
No,
course,
because of boosting,
yes,
you
yes,
use an extra gem and you can boost your path. And
for
by
sure.
the time you get to this one, Conjuration 7, you should
mm,
have you should have Construction 6. So you'll be throwing on water bracelets and stuff like that. Um, so I don't know about you guys, but when I will use this is similar to well, basically, most of the time you're better off to make the big ones.
hmm
But the
Yeah,
advantage to
for
this one
sure.
is if you just need to fill a flank, like
hmm
if you put your elemental summoner on the top or bottom flanks, you'll fill the flank, and that can be useful to avoid being flanked. It gives some stuff to soak lances or to tie up elite troops. Works really well with the fatigue play because it's just so many hit points you're making very
Sure,
quickly.
sure.
So those are all of the living spells have that kind of nature. And then most of them synergize with a combat spell based on their resistances. So, like Living Water, if you're playing Foul Vapors, that would synergize well.
For sure.
And
And there's
then
oh,
Living
you go.
Air synergizes really well with Wrathful Skies.
Hmm
I
But
think. Oh, sorry. Go on.
oh, I'm sorry. I kept trying to. Okay, you just go. You just go.
Oh, I mean, I was just gonna make the a similar point I've made on all the living spells, which is if you're like 2 paths higher, however you go
hmm
about it, the living spells are like super great.
hmm
Now, of course, it kind of hurts the water elemental maybe a little more than some of the other elementals because it loses a crush attack. Like normally we would have 4 as a
Yeah.
big elemental, but I mean, as Marilyn said, it's a giant blob of HP that
Yeah.
Right.
just spawns out of nowhere. And especially if you're
And
a high water mage, you're gonna get a lot.
yeah.
Uh,
Um, the other thing about the two trampling elementals, if we just want to reference that briefly,
Mm,
one of the disadvantages is if you're fighting larger things like giants, they're not very good. So
for
then you
sure.
want to go back to the other elemental. Like that's where the size really matters. It's not as important with the water elementals. You know, 3 of these or 4 of these versus one big elemental still will do the job against most things.
mm,
Yeah, I mean, if you're summoning the normal water elemental in cold and it spawns an ice elemental size 6, that's
Yes.
that could be acceptable. I mean, I guess in like early age against was that Niflheim that could be a problem, but
Yeah, there aren't many size 6 giants. Um, but that is a relevant consideration is, if and that applies to any use of tramplers of any kind. You kind of want to be thinking about how big are the guys you're trying to trample.
Do you have any more points on this RCK, or can we move along?
Kind of what Marilyn was talking about earlier with the filling the flank spot, because you have to take in consideration that the Living Waters one, they're coming out of size 4, and you're not actually. I mean, every square is only 6. You only fit 6 sizes of units in it or whatever.
Hmm.
So they're filling up 4 separate squares to begin with. Then on top of that, whenever they start taking hits, they consolidate into squares very nicely as well. Because once they get to a size 4, that size 4, or once they get to a size 2, that size 4 is going to be able to move up, get into the same square as the other water elemental. So that's nice.
I see.
I just wanted to make a comment on battle layout when summoning elementals. One thing I tend to do is I will try to leave holes between my squads of real troops for the
Mm.
elementals to pass through. But there are cases, and this is unique or a bit specialized, but you can actually put up a big line, summon your elementals behind it, and then point buff them. It's one of the few ways to point
Mm.
buff elementals. So you can body ethereal
Sure.
them. You can use gift of flight, get them flying. All kinds of things that are really hard to do otherwise.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider. Like battle layout when summoning elementals can make a big difference depending on your goals. If your goal is to use them as hit points to soak damage, then you want them rushing in front.
But water
So there you go.
elementals with 20 protection are much better
Yeah,
than ones
exactly.
with
Yeah.
0.
Yeah, if you could throw up Iron Warriors or Marble Warriors or Army
Mm.
of Gold or whatever.
Okay, great. Uh, okay, so these are all the ritual summonable units with water. The first is the Kraken at Conjuration 3. Um, I've seen this guy as an independent spawn a lot.
Hmm.
Yes, and it dies.
I mean, I've never summoned one before, but if you
Uh,
needed 60 hit points, yeah, he's one you could summon.
but they're size 6, so they get harassed so badly.
Yeah,
There's all kinds of little tiny things in the water that surround them. They don't kill worth a damn. Look at their stats: attack at 10 and defense of
yeah,
7,
pretty bad.
And even if they hit,
protection slow.
it's
And
not
they're an
actually.
animal, so look at the magic resistance.
Yeah.
Oof.
And worst of
And keep
all,
in mind,
it's a water
you're
spell.
right, and it water only. So you're going to be dealing with Rillier
Right.
or astral magic from Plagia or whatever. Yeah, they just don't cut it.
Sure, astral magic is very common underwater.
In
That's a.
transitioning
I
into their late game, he's aquatic. You can't really use him later on. It's tough.
Yeah, they're pretty terrible. I think they're the worst of the underwater or most of the water summons.
Going back to water elementals.
Exactly.
At Conjuration 4, you get two summons actually. The first one we'll talk about is the Sea Serpent, who looks directly at you when he attacks. I mean, he has
Is
70
there,
hit points for an undisciplined animal.
so there's a fun trick here. You notice it's a Drake,
Um,
Mm.
sure. So
so
if you're
Dragon
dragon,
Master works.
Huh.
sure, you get more of them. I
Yeah, you
mean,
get
that's a
3.
lot of hit
Oh, that's
points.
pretty cool.
Well, the other thing is they have Fear Aura, and if you can stack enough of them, you've got stacked Fear. I'm not saying they're great, but they're a hell of a lot better than Krakens.
I mean, yeah, they are. But I mean, three. I mean, if you're using a Dragon Master thing and you're getting 3 of them for 4 gem, I mean, it's not too bad. The fear is nice, and they are better than Kraken, Jess.
I think this
But
unit
they're
sucks.
they're another one of those emergency. Oh my God, I'm in trouble. I got to summon
Mm,
something to hold up the
Yes.
walls or whatever.
Yeah.
But
true.
again, low magic resistance. At least their attack is decent. Single attack though in size 6, that's rough.
And you can only summon them underwater, and they can't go on land normally.
Exactly. So they're pretty D tier.
And they're undisciplined.
Yeah, that too. Well, that's right. The last time I really used them was in Dominions 4 when they weren't. They were a
Mm.
lot better then.
But it's 70 hit points, and yeah, I mean, if you can summon more than one a turn for 4 water gems, and you're fighting an underwater war, I guess It's not
Well,
terrible.
Dragon Master is very expensive in vanilla, but it can be worth it. But we're going to get to the better version for Music Dragon Master.
Yeah. So also a conjuration for 7 water gems. You get a ice drake, who is
But
not.
notice the magic resistance,
Yeah,
and then the cone damage dragon breath.
sure. And it's armor negating,
That's correct.
which is an unfortunate tag that or to not exist on a lot of water spells. But the ice drake has it, so that's good. I mean, it's a lot like the other drakes, I guess. It's a big HP blob that's decently tanky, decently resistant. It's kind of expensive, but it has a cool, literally, breath attack.
Yeah. Well, I've from experience, these are reasonably popular
Mm,
that people will use them. The last time I used them was actually oddly enough with the Gartha, and
Hmm.
but I got enchantresses, so I did Dragon Master on a couple, and it gave me some extra siege strength because their siege is not bad
sure.
Hmm.
on on the outside. Yeah, I noticed their magic resistance quite good, so they're not bad for 7 gems. They're not bad.
Yeah, I think this is a totally reasonable unit, especially if your opponent has no cold resistance at all.
That's a key one there. That's a very key issue there. Yeah, because he's going to have to sit there if you've got 10 of them dealing with all those breath,
Mm,
and then you know constantly taking chip damage, and then slowly have to chop them up.
did you have anything to add, RCK, on this guy?
No, I
I
mean,
just I realized I was like clicking off of it, and you didn't get to say anything.
no, no, it's good. It's good. I mean, yeah, honestly, I feel like you're buying them for the breath attack that they have. I mean, they have 5 shots, ammunition of 5, so I mean that's a
Mm,
decent number of shots. 41 hit points are nice. 13 protection's good. Magical resistance is good. But you guys kind of already went over that,
Yeah,
it's a fine
so
unit.
it looks good.
And to swap to enchantment briefly, for 2 water gems, you can get the most powerful water summon, the gelatinous cube. And don't laugh, this guy's good. He does acid damage.
no, no,
Uh,
I know. They're really slow to mass, which is one of the
Hmm.
problems.
yeah,
Uh,
you only get one.
but have you seen have you seen when people enlarge them and then body ethereal them and then gift of flight them? It's
Oh,
just gross. They're just a thug eater.
So something to note.
Argo did that in the tournament.
Um,
God.
something to note. For those of you who are watching may not know, acid damage is an extremely rare form of damage. There's as far as I know, there's no ways to soak acid damage.
There is not a resistance to it.
Nope.
Right, right. So it's like it's basically guaranteed damage every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one that it's the one sort of kind of element that doesn't have a resistance. Oh, holy as well. Holy and
Sure,
acid.
Mm.
sure. Uh, but I mean, it's okay. It'll probably just get like chewed up if they're in small numbers by like random projectiles, having no protection, and yeah, being a combat speed 2 blob.
Oof.
But
But
For her.
note their resistances. Fire,
yes,
cold, and poison.
for sure.
So they work quite well with the foul vapors.
It's interesting to see the stealthy tag on them, though.
I've never seen anybody use that. There aren't very many stealthy magic leading
Yeah.
options. Like that's a difficult combo. You'd have to probably do a shade mail on a mage to bring them. And requiring magic leader, is always a bit of a challenge.
Oh,
Um,
I was just gonna say you can cast this on land, so it makes it
Yes,
okay.
yes, they're yeah, no, no, they are viable land and water.
What were you gonna
I
say?
just like the acid damage that they have here. It's just a very interesting thing into the game, and there's very few ways for you to actually get the acid damage. Like, uh, what there's like
Yes,
there's not many.
green lions,
Yeah.
the fire water acid spells.
Yeah, acid rain.
there's not many.
So if you're looking for a source of acid damage and you are unfortunately a water nation, here you go.
Yeah, and if you want to see examples of these, there's some examples in the tournament final videos on Lucid's channel
Mm-hmm.
of these used exceptionally well, like two of them with two magi.
And okay, Conjuration 5, you get the sea trolls. So these guys have the distinguishing trait of costing you gold in addition to the
Yes,
gems that
yes.
they cost. For some reason, they cost gold.
The
Um,
trolls have it's a deliberate bit of lore that trolls cost upkeep.
I see. Well,
Yeah,
that's
that's a thing back from Illwinter. From, for example, Bogus the Troll was actually their pen and paper role playing character at one time.
I see. Um, I mean, aren't there like better units for this purpose? I get like
Well,
big HP, good magic resistance.
terrible stats
Yeah.
and and terrible damage and range zero weapon. Um, but I will bring up what I brought when we were on break. I have two reasons I will summon these. Well, actually, if you can scale them enough, they're not bad for siege. But most important, the two things I use them for is pretty good for soaking astral damage like Mind Blast and Paralyze and stuff like that. Because of their big hit points, they will preferentially be targeted. And the
Sure.
second purpose for all trolls for me is if you've got death magic and you're using soul vortex, they're good vortex batteries. And what I mean by that is you put them on guard commander,
Hmm.
and the soul vortex soaks fatigue and or it grabs fatigue and it grabs hit points from these guys all the time that mage is
Right.
sitting there doing what it's doing.
Sure.
So
The
they're pretty good for that.
the trolls
There's
they're howling in pain, desperate to
Yeah,
escape.
and you'll cripple the heck out of them, but they don't die. So you'll end up with, you know, 5 or 7 afflictions on your trolls. But so those are the two reasons I will summon them. Those are niche uses, so I don't rate them very high.
Sure. You can cast them on land. That's
Yes, you
another.
can.
I guess I have to
Yep.
bring that up every time the spells that can and cannot be
Yeah.
cast on land.
They work on land. Did we? Oh, did we? I heard a bleep like we lost somebody.
Hey, I'm back. So,
Hello.
the one thing I wanted about the sea trolls to have a sea troll nation, you can't ever actually recruit them. So you have to summon them.
Yes.
I just thought it'd be cool, but I
Um,
mean
there might be a mod nation that's done it.
that would be
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, no, you can get the troll pit.
Mm,
So you might find it someday at random.
I've never found it. Well, I'm still looking. One day I'll find it. But other than that, I mean, high strength. I feel like they're going to siege forts down fast. I don't know if you guys said that or not since I
Mm,
got kicked out.
I mentioned that they're good for siege. Yeah.
Yep, good, good. High hit points with the regeneration. Sure, they have 8 protection, but okay. They're just there to take hits and be chaff. Be a tough wall to get through.
Yeah, they can't hit anything. They're
Yeah,
just terrible.
they have one claw attack. That's just so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
also at Conjuration 5, you can spend 8 water gems to get 5 plus some change Winter Wolves.
Let's refresh.
And
Let's change that up a little bit. To spend 5 or 8 water gems to get frost breath. That's the only thing you want here.
what? What do you mean? Look, they have 0 protection. They're
Polarization is
ethereal.
interesting.
Yeah, we were having a discussion about the seasonal animals,
Hmm.
and most people agreed that these are probably the best of them.
Yeah, the breath attack
Of the
is really
seasonal.
nice.
Yeah. And of course, if you do have ability to buff protection, either barkskin
Hmm.
or
They're also
iron
ethereal. I didn't
warriors,
notice that.
yeah, they are.
Nice.
So I have seen them recently used really very effectively on the flanks in particular because they're fast. Combat speed 26.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So use them as cavalry, basically.
Having magical resistance 15 is also very nice. Morale
Yeah.
50. Okay.
And the price is pretty good. Like
Sure.
5 for 8 is not bad at all. That's
Yeah.
quite good. Anything 2 or less gems each is usually pretty solid.
Yeah, it's good on mage turn efficiency without a doubt.
That too. That
And
too.
its
Yeah.
resistances are very nice. It has a cold aura.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
I've seen them used in little tiny groups of 5 or 6, whatever you end up getting,
mm,
as raiders
Mm.
and flankers.
yeah, I mean against mundane troops, actually not bad at all.
Well, in certain elite troops, things that are vulnerable to frost.
Sure, sure. I meant just the ethereal nature coupled
Oh
with
yeah,
these
yeah,
above average stats.
yeah. If you take them up against anything with a magic weapon, that's pretty rough.
And they have 50 morale too. Yeah, this unit's
Yeah,
great. I like this unit a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. They're not bad. That was a discussion we just had a couple days ago on one of the questions channels of, which of the seasonal animals do you like to use? And the most popular were these ones.
At Conjuration 6. Oh, wow, these are good spells. Yeah, at Conjuration 6, you can summon the Bishop Fish, the second most used water spell by me.
So why? I mean, I know why, but
I know what to.
So, the Bishop Fish is a very, very easy way to get a Holy 3 priest, which is essential in Dominions because you need Holy 3s to claim thrones. Now, you may be saying, but wait, he's aquatic, he can't go on land, you know. But you can just feed him like a shambler skin, and then he can walk
exactly.
wherever you want him to go, which is
Although
extremely
my
cheap.
my preference, the way I geared them for a throne when we did a while back, was a shade mail, a fish amulet, and a flying carpet.
Yes, I was just gonna
Mm.
say that.
That's kind of the expensive way, but then you could sneak them. You can sneak them to the throne, grab it quickly, throw up an instant fort with Wizard Tower or something, and then claim it. Boom, game over.
Because they are very slow with that map movement of 10, and
Yeah,
they don't have a foot slot for any flying shoes, but the magic carpet is the way you're going to be able to get them to move fast. I was just going to
yeah,
mention that.
Mm.
yeah. And fish amulet is tough, but in this case, if you're close to going for a throne win, it's probably worth empowering in air if you haven't got an air water guy, um, just for this purpose. We did it one time and we built 6 of these things,
Mm.
and we went and grabbed 4 thrones. We just ended all our NEPs with everybody and ended the
Hmm.
game.
Nice.
It's a super powerful tool, and if you're a water nation, you probably need it.
Yeah. Now, but for other nations, the advantage of being able to divine bless everywhere is pretty good, and for that you just need the Shambler skin, and
Mm.
that's cheap.
Yeah, I mean, just on its own merits, it's totally usable.
Yeah,
Bishop
they're the
Fish is
only
great.
holy 3 summon in the game.
Yep.
All right,
The only other way to get holy 3 is some artifacts.
you win this time, water. Also a
Well, they're
conjuration.
about to have another win
All
here.
right, all
I
right.
like this one.
Yeah, this guy's pretty okay. You spend 55 water gems, um, but you get a guy who will produce one water gem, and he's water 3 himself. I mean, this
He's
this mage
he's not
is
a bad
essential
he's not
sometimes.
a bad thug either.
Hmm. Yeah, his
No,
resistances are pretty okay.
well, he's got full slots, 50 hit points or 63, sorry, plus built-in regen, water buffs. Not bad.
And, and if you wait 56 turns, you get a return on your investment.
But like I commented earlier, the one nice thing about generate your own gems is they're
Mhm.
more resilient to gem burning.
I completely agree.
I think the Sea King's Court. Oh, by the way, these guys also cost money, so just be prepared for that. I mean, they of
Yeah.
course don't cost upfront money, but they'll suck away your income via upkeep.
Yeah.
So it may be
Well,
in
if
your
you
best interest to take the troops and just have them go on a little vacation forever, if you know what I mean.
think about the price, Magic 3 single path Magi usually cost between 30 and 40. So if you look at that, you're paying about 25 for the troops. That's not bad.
Yeah, and I mean,
And honestly, you can throw the troops in the trash, and I'll still keep the Sea King at the 55. Because the only reason I'd be summoning him is because I'd want higher water that I don't have.
for sure.
Right. Exactly. So you're trying to diversify and give yourself some more water casters, for buffs and battle enchants and stuff.
And for that purpose, at a generic level, he's the best.
Yeah.
So,
And it's easy. It's an easy spell to cast.
yep,
Only needing water 3 to get to it is easy to boost too.
this spell is great.
It's a
And
good spell.
Conjuration
I wouldn't
7.
use too much of it, but
Oh, sure, yeah. I don't think I would cast it a second time, um, because, you know,
I'd at least
what?
have one. I don't know if I'd go to the Maybe I don't know. It depends, but I probably. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, recently I got one, because I had rushed alteration but not enchantment, and I
Uh
had to
huh.
go fight a whole bunch of fire magic.
hmm,
And so I could do Warriors of Muspelheim to get
Mm-hmm.
fire resist. So it was worth the 55 gems to give me battle wide fire resist to deal with massive fire elementals. I had fire magi, but I just didn't have the research yet.
Yeah.
at Conjuration 7, you can get a turtle.
Yeah, I think I have summoned these once. They were spectacularly unimpressive.
I've
Yeah.
definitely summoned them before because they just sound cool.
Mhm.
You pay 13 water gems. Can only use them underwater
Yeah.
at Conjuration 7.
Well, and
Um,
they're really not as good as the sea serpent,
yeah.
or at least they're roughly comparable. Size
Yeah.
6, one attack.
Although this one takes like 30 more turns of research.
Yeah,
I was about to say that too. It's like they feel like they just come so late into the game for you. Like at Conjuration 7, your underwater war probably is already over.
yeah,
Yes, they
yeah,
give you fear, but sea serpents are cheaper and they give you that too. I mean,
right. And they aren't great either.
You're not going down Conjuration for the Asp Turtle.
No, no,
This is
definitely not.
this is not a good spell.
the
Um,
next spell is what you're going down Conjuration for.
yes, yes. Along with all the other ones. So Conjuration 8 for 50 water gems, which is an absolute steal. You get the
I
Queens
know,
of
right?
Elemental Water.
And what's her
Better than
name?
patrol.
Yeah, which one? It's Limna, I believe, is the
Yeah, the Queen
amphibious
of the
one.
Lake. She
Yeah,
so
she doesn't. So she could buy. She's easier to thug.
yeah, she can go
Mm.
on land, whereas these two inherently rather she can go on land being amphibious.
That's
These
right.
two are
That's right.
aquatic, so you're gonna have to give them equipment if you want them to move on land.
I will make a note of the other two. The built-in summons, often by that
Oh,
point in time, you couldn't care less if they're researching,
Yeah,
and those are free.
true.
So they're not a bad. If anytime I get an elemental royalty that doesn't have a job at the moment, I'll have them summon their stuff. It's not amazing, but
Hmm.
their research points are not particularly that wonderful. So
and I mean if you're underwater, which you have to be to cast the Queen of Elemental Water, um, you're going to be able to cast every single water spell in the game from this point
right,
on with
exactly,
any one of these. So
yeah.
whatever water you want, you can make it happen.
Well, and they sure help you if you want the scaling summons from water.
Sure.
For example, the winter wolves, or
And
there aren't
if
very many, but
if you are sending them into battle underwater, uh, like 90% underwater regeneration, 70% underwater regeneration.
Well, and they've got great
It's
resistances.
yeah, it's
So
extremely difficult to kill these things.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, they're good thugs. I'm sure you talked about in the other Magic Path videos you've done about the whole decision whether or not you try for elemental royalty.
Sure.
It's nice if you got lots of scouting and maybe even ask people you get
mm,
along with, have you got any? Am I wasting my gems?
it
Yeah.
sucks when you do it. When you summon, they're like, "Oh, there's already 3." Oh,
Yeah,
fuck.
yeah. But this is late game Conjuration 8. So by that point in time, you should be able to make that balanced
Yeah.
decision of is this worth the gems? Do I have somewhere else to put 50 gems or is this it?
Another thing that could be good with these guys, I mean, since they are a water 5, you can put a couple boosters on them. They're easily up to a water 7. They can hold globals for you if you need them to. If there's a
Hmm.
global you want for sure.
Well, and we'll get to the globals, but some of
Yeah.
the water globals need a high path.
Yeah.
But these women are great. These are super good. I mean, this is an amazing spell. I mean, basically like all the elemental royalty
Hmm.
spells.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you cast it and it fizzles because they're already out, then that's a disaster. But if you get them, like it's a tool to win the game.
yeah.
And I feel like they're just priced so cheap. Just 50 gems for the 5 path mage like that. Whereas with the Sea King, you're paying 55 for a 3 path mage. It's like,
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, most of the summon magi are three or max of a three.
So these are all the damage dealing water spells, starting with Cold Bolt, Evocation 1, Water 2. Um, you do 19 cold damage. So you actually send out a projectile that has to physically travel over the battlefield. Um,
The
I
range
mean,
is huge,
if it hits, yeah, the range is huge. If it hits the
but the
target,
precision is not great.
yeah.
I
I
think it
mean,
should get extra points because it is a projectile, and I just like seeing them fly across the battlefield.
Yeah, they do look good. They do look good.
uh, I,
And
I,
it,
I hate this spell.
well, I would never script it, but
mm,
it's not a bad thing for a water mage to just be casting after you run out of scripts.
Yeah, off
It's a
script
heck of a
cast.
lot better as it's a heck of a lot better against packed enemies.
sure, yeah. If it can't fail to hit a target, it's going to be a lot better. And I mean, it's a lot of raw damage, but
Yeah.
Mhm.
it has
And the
no armor
and the chill
piercing.
is not bad.
I
Sure.
mean, if
The
it's a
additional,
human sized unit, I mean, if you're hitting them from 19 plus cold damage, I mean, there's a good chance.
You'll kill a
I mean, it's not
militia.
armor negating, but there's a good chance you can kill them.
You'll kill like a
yeah,
light infantry.
Yeah.
it doesn't compare badly to like fireflies and
Mm.
or what's the little rocks? I can't remember the name. It doesn't compare badly to those.
Sure, the Earth guy.
Yeah,
Flying shards.
flying
Mm,
sharks. That's it.
Yes.
also at Evocation 1, you get Water Strike, only usable underwater. Um, this is not a projectile, right? This is just hits a square
Yeah,
and
Yes.
goes.
yeah. It's kind of like mind blast that way, but it is only water one.
Um,
So if you've cast water power, you could spam this forever.
Mm.
At 20 fatigue, make that
Oh,
10.
true.
So it's not bad. I've actually been damaged by independent water magi with water strike, and it can be a little painful. Like during expansion, right? You've only got a small squad of 10 or whatever.
right, yes.
I mean, I feel like being at Evocation 1, very, very low. All water ones can at least cast it. Very low fatigue cost, dealing 13 damage. Pretty good underwater, especially in the early game if you're throwing water one mages into the fight, you know? I
That's
mean,
right.
you could be casting worse things for sure.
Um, could you?
I don't know. Is there anything else worse than water? I don't ever play in the water. I don't know. So
um,
those underwater only spells are like just a mystery to me because I never really fight underwater that much where I just play the underwater spells.
I think
Well, about all I'll say about that is I don't script it.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna say the same. If I find myself in a situation where I'm scripting Water Strike, I've lost the game.
Oh,
Yeah,
they're always going to cast the things you don't want them to cast.
yeah, but you use your 5 for more important things. Like if I have 5 in a water one, I'd probably give it some gems, have a couple little elementals, have it summon water power, maybe some sharks, and and then when it's all done that, like the little shark spell,
Hmm.
when it's all done that, then it can sit there and fling these off forever.
I'm just saying, such a low or magic level and magic path is very, very nice, though.
Yeah.
But if your opponent has any protection, it's gonna do
We're
like
not going to
nothing.
think about that. We're not going to
Okay,
think
I see. I
about
see.
We're just saying they
There's a
don't have
lot
to.
of but there's a lot of zero protection or very low
That is
protection
true.
stuff in the
That is
water.
true, too.
Underwater,
There's a lot
sure.
of it. I mean, imagine you're dealing with sharks
Or the Kraken.
or the kraken.
I mean, I guess that is a legitimate situation.
The level has really dropped, okay? The
At
bar.
Thaumaturgy 1, you can hit a whole square, area of effect 1, with a desiccation effect that they resist
Notice,
resist magic resistance negates.
notice precision 100.
Yes, so
Mm.
it'll always hit exactly where you want it to go. Um, I mean, it's a chunk of fatigue damage.
It is.
If you spam this on like one guy, he's
Although
gonna.
if we're including this, we should include numbness because they're very similar. Because this is a fatigue spell.
Oh, is numbness not a? Does that not do fatigue damage?
Or is it?
Uh,
I don't know. I always forget what the magic resistant negates part's at.
22 is pretty high. I think
that's pretty high.
for a thaumaturgy 1 spell, desiccation has consistent use.
Yeah.
Well, typical MR is 10 to 12 for most units. So
Hmm.
you'd have to roll a 12, a 10 to a 12. So that's a pretty low chance to roll that.
True. That's what I was thinking too. So that is a plus. We can talk about that when the video starts.
Oh, I hit the go button already.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry,
Oh, then
I
we'll
did it
talk
just
about
now.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, desiccation's good, I guess. If they have like like I guess against the low MR, I
It's
don't
probably
know,
always going to work.
thug.
Well, but I believe the way you read that, my understanding is that effect stays on them until they negate it.
Really.
Hmm.
I
Oh,
see.
it does
That's how
say
Yes,
you
each
read that.
turn. It
yes,
does say
each
Hmm.
that
turn.
made it a lot better. That made it a lot
Oh,
better.
yeah. So they
Okay,
will eventually shake it off, but in the interim, they're taking, an average of 8 or 9 fatigue every turn.
that's pretty nice. That's not unlike some like battlefield wide spells, except you
And
get this at level 1, thaumaturgy 1.
you can
Yeah.
also think that okay, this is only you only need water two. Well, all your water ones can boost up to a water two and cast this 5 to 6 times before they're fatigued out.
Well, this works on land as well.
Mm,
It does. Oh, nice.
Mhm.
yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
oh yeah.
So,
Otherwise, I would have clicked away.
It's a
yeah,
pretty good thumb one spell for what it does. Pretty good.
it's not bad.
Um, at evocation 2, you can.
Oh, you close numbness.
Oh,
I mean, you're going up by magic
sure.
levels,
I
so
would.
you
Yeah,
can
I was
close.
just going by magic levels. Uh,
Gotcha.
at evocation 2, you can do this.
The range is really low.
Yeah,
Oh,
this is like.
So this is a frontline last ditch or advance and cast.
Yeah, this is
yeah.
like a kind of apocalyptic
Not something you're gonna
casting
script.
restrictions. And it doesn't
Well, I've
even do that much damage.
I've been using a whole bunch of my little water ones and water twos with Sabalba and putting them behind the line and then having them advance and cast right away. The purpose
Hmm.
is actually for dust to dust, but
Hmm,
this would be a
Mm.
comparable situation.
sure, sure. Close range. I mean, it's a okay AoE. I mean, it's an
Well,
evocation 2 spell.
if it's a cheap mage, because there's water 2 magi in the game for I think like 55.
Sure.
So, or maybe a little more, but you don't mind if you know you're not you're not going to want to risk your big expensive magi by
Yeah,
casting this.
for sure.
And if your opponent has like even cold resistance 10, this spell will do nothing.
Right.
Will do absolutely nothing at all.
Well, and that is a complaint of I think both fire and water
Sure.
is that they pretty much lose all their ability to do anything once there's resistances.
Definitely.
I suppose I just mean that at least their fire could do some chip damage because it's armor piercing, whereas this is not.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway,
It's not a spell you're going to base a game on.
at Alteration 3, you can cast Numbness,
So,
which
in my opinion, this is really quite a good spell. It
um,
doesn't seem like it, but the net effect against guys without cold resistance is you can really lock them in place, tie them up, and mess them up. And I used to use the staff for it quite often if I had extra water gems and nothing better to make. So this isn't a bad spell. I think it's better used with staff and you put it on basic commanders, gives them something to do. But since we are talking about the spells, it's a spell I have used, definitely.
On top of this, you think it's going to be slowing down their troops, breaking up their lines. Maybe it's targeting things like Cav, things like that,
Right,
slowing them
right.
down.
And it's
Yeah,
AoE, precision
oh,
100.
that's nice.
So as long as you can get in range, it works. It does something.
True.
um I guess I have to be the voice of dissent. Unfortunately,
Oh,
I think Numbness is horrible. I mean, okay, you're the the points you brought up. I'm not going to argue against them. Just I would rather there's some really powerful water spells. I guess if we're thinking like Alteration 3 is the pinnacle, then Numbness can do a lot for you, but just like creating
Well,
one square of mild sluggishness is
but alteration is one of the most popular research rush targets
for sure.
to three
For
or
sure.
four,
Yes,
and
especially
this
for water.
compares quite effectively to numbness and slime. And using cheap little magi to throw out debuffs, which is what this kind of is, it's a valid thing to do. I wouldn't use it later in the game, of course not. But
And you can't miss either,
right,
which is
right.
and I,
true.
w-
So I
I will
mean,
say that don't think of it just as one square. I mean, they might be able to hit two or three squares, or if the units are fighting the front line and they're on advance and cast spells, I mean, they're hitting those frontline troops that are in combat, you know?
Um, I suppose I'm just air pilled, and I look at this and I think like, well, what if I was casting lightning bolt?
Well, you
but
can't think that because you don't have any air, you only have water
You're
now.
right. You're right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
well, we're talking about a water primary nation that will have a lot of water magi,
Sure.
and there's very few water. A lot of water primary nations don't have. A lot of them have earth, but not that many have fire or air.
Sure.
I mean, if you don't like water magic, don't pick a water primary nation.
Don't play water.
Yeah. Well, and also water primaries like uh, Tala or
Yeah.
um, even sort of Kalesa.
Zavolva has a lot of water, don't it? The late one does, doesn't it?
Middle and late have a huge
Middle and
amount of
late,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's a stronger path than the Earth, so I have to use a lot of it.
Um, moving along to Thaumaturgy 3, you get Sailor's Death, which requires you to be a Water 3 mage. That's kind of prohibitive. Um, and it's also kind of weird because it affects air breathers only. But, I mean, it's armor
It,
negating
it kills them.
damage, yeah, if they don't past the save, I suppose. Also, this is precision 1, so
No, there's no save.
this is not a, it says magic resistance
Oh, it
negates
does.
on
You're
this
right.
guy.
Yeah.
But is this a projectile or is this like falling fires that just like comes down and just like hits a square?
I believe it doesn't have a projectile sprite,
Um,
Yeah, I think
and
it's just like in
therefore
the patterns.
it's like Mind Blast. If you
Yeah.
compared this to Mind Blast, it's fairly comparable, except the precision's poor.
I see.
But it'll kill stuff.
And it's only Thaumaturgy 3, so yeah, I
Yeah.
mean this is not bad. I like this spell a lot. Even if it is kind of situational, and it's a little high on the path magic, I think the research makes it pretty okay.
Well, again, I think we're talking about nations with water primary, and they'll have water threes, water fours, water fives, even. So it's definitely an option if you've in the earlier part of the game.
Hmm, for sure. And then at Thaumaturgy 4, you get Desiccation but bigger.
That's right. Yeah.
Um,
And now the path isn't so bad because AoE 5 is quite good, plus
right.
precision 100.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
thinking that myself.
I mean,
That's a pretty solid spell, and the range is okay. 30 is enough to stay behind your lines
right.
adequately.
I think this spell is very good, especially at the point you get it at Thaumaturgy 4. And so many water nations have astral access that you want to go into Thaumaturgy anyway.
By the way, this just reminded me of a comment. With Curse of the Desert and Desiccation, it's one case where water magic can be used with people who have taken cold resist.
Mm.
And
That's actually interesting because I have kind of play off that very often. That like I'm in a Pangea game, okay, EA Pangea,
Mm,
and I went cold 3 with cold resistance, planning on doing like Grip of Winters and things like that later on. Just interesting to see and think about seeing other fatigue spells that are nice, Curse of the Desert, things like that.
yeah, yeah. So that's just something to consider because I've seen quite a bit of cold resist, and in the one game where I'm Zabalba, I've been dealing with Jotunheim, and my frozen hearts aren't working.
mm.
So
Yeah, Curse the Desert's good. I
yeah,
mean, this is like you can hit with not that many casts. You can afflict large in an entire army practically.
exactly.
So it's a good spell. At Evocation 5, you get Falling Frost. I hate this spell.
Yeah, it used to be pretty good,
Um,
but resistance is so common now. Like even just cold resist 5 is just so common. And when I say used to, I meant to the days of percentage resist.
Mm.
I see.
Um, Now that it's a fixed resist, I don't see this used much. I don't use it much,
I don't use it.
and it's just not the spell it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, if the opponent has no armor and no cold resistance,
Yeah, because it's not
then
armor negating or armor penetrating.
it's pretty good because it's a giant
It has to for a
AOE.
lot then.
But it's like that situation never that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It, it's pretty uncommon nowadays. Yeah,
You don't want
yeah.
to go
I
Evocation
almost never
5
see
for
it
this.
used.
Yeah. At Evocation 6, you get Cleansing Water, which you only have to be
Well,
a Water 2 mage to cast this spell.
yeah, and the blatant thing here is it's really amazing for wiping out demons and undead, and
Yes.
otherwise it's useless. But
Yes.
it's
Because of the
huge. I mean, the amount of
AoE.
it. Well, they say it's an AOE, but if I remember correctly, it sends out like this big wave of white
Yeah.
cold bolts,
Mm,
and they'll just wipe out a section. You
Mhm.
got to hit a few times, but a lot of undead only has a very few hit points.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the big parts you have to consider. when people are bringing undead to fight you, they're in huge blobs. Like it's hard to miss, you know.
Well, and there's quite a lot of the undead you're going to have trouble with that are. No, I think this is magic damage. So
Yes.
the ethereal undead of, say, Theranos or whatever, this works.
Sure.
It's a good spell in the situation it applies to.
Yep. Of course, if you're
And,
not fighting undead or demons, don't waste your time.
well, it won't cast it. So
Yeah.
you need not really worry about it.
But if you are fighting undead or demons, it's superb.
Worth it.
At Evocation 7, you get Ice Strike, which again, only a Water 2 mage required to cast this super good spell.
Yeah, because it's normal damage and slashing. So
um,
yeah.
uh, this isn't that long range.
No, but by
Oh,
Evocation
fair enough.
7, I don't know. I mean, it'll use it after you script. And probably I know that I tend to when I've got Water Magi, they usually have a full script of buffing, prepping, and then if they throw this, great.
I mean, that late into the game, I mean, I'd probably want to be casting our next spell more than Ice Strike.
Mm,
But I
Yeah.
mean, Ice Strike does have an AoE to it, so that is nice, I suppose.
But it typically, yeah, by the time you're at Evocation 7, I think most of my Magi are fully five filled with self buff, buff, quickness. We'll
Hmm.
get to those, but
sure.
I tend to fill it with that kind of stuff, and then the evocations are whatever is left over.
Yeah.
Yeah, um,
Shit.
I don't think this is a very good spell, but it's pretty cheap on the water restriction. At Evocation, never mind. We're not going to talk. We're going to talk about Frozen Heart first.
Yes.
Frozen Heart. This spell is amazing. This
Yes.
spell, I don't, I don't know. I mean, does it deserve to be this good? Yes.
Um,
Water needed something.
well, keep in mind there's one frustration with this spell is the AI just will not cast it at 10
Hmm.
cold resist. It
Mm,
just will not, even though it would still penetrate, and it just won't. Now, people have talked about maybe at some point that'll get fixed because if you were to try to wipe out a thug and you had, 10 or 20 water one magi, you could kill it if it would cast it, but
sure.
it won't.
Yeah.
And
But
and you have to take in consideration this being a water one spell with 20 fatigue. Your guys are like water twos, water threes, like they're just gonna be able to constantly cast this if they could,
Hmm.
if they decide to cast it. Being armor negating is great. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Ignore shields,
it's
Yeah. And it's internal damage. So if I
Mm.
remember correctly, that means it increases the chance of afflictions.
interesting. Uh, when the spell works, it's fantastic. It's a
Yes.
classic. This is a classic water spell
It's a great counter thug option
for sure.
or counter elites. It's a great way to wipe out the Genome giants.
Yeah, good spell. And the last alteration water spell in this section that we're talking about is liquefy. Uh, the targets are turned into pools of liquid flesh, causing instant death, which sounds really awesome, but it's a magic resist negates easily spell.
Well, it's like disintegrate. When it works, you're wiping out
Mhm.
super combatants.
Mm,
You're trying your best to just roll against that magic resistance, and like if you roll enough times, it might come up good.
sure, yeah.
Well, that's like Soul Slay spam, except this is harder to
Yeah,
cast because it's
yeah.
water four. Um, I've seen it work well, but you probably want some penetration gear if you're serious about it. And if you're at Alteration 8, maybe you're doing something else. You might be doing Warriors of Muspelheim, or
True.
there's a lot of competition by that point in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're trying to like one shot kill a thug, we looked
It,
over a water spell that does, fill a similar role.
It does, but this would work against something that has cold resist.
Sure, sure.
I mean, it's got its use.
and you'll usually see a lot of magical resistance items on thugs and things of that such, so it will make it a little bit tougher depending on how well your player is equipping them up. So,
Yeah, I mean, if the right situation shows up, but you got to think the water four, you're either boosting with items or
hmm
you're using capital only magi usually. Um,
hmm
so you're not going to be doing a lot of these. If you compare that with Soul Slay at Astral 3, that's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Plus,
yeah,
Astral's kind of special because you've got Light of the Northern Star. So
Mm,
I noticed that I mean, it's a slight meander, but there are mods that give a battle wide water buff of +1.
mm,
over that.
Yeah. To compensate for that thing, the water power doesn't work on that.
sure.
Well, that's not too bad then.
And the last water damaging spell, Evocation 9. You spend 2 water gems and you do 10 armor negating cold damage in a massive area of effect.
And a massive range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
this spell's pretty okay.
But the simple problem is Evocation 9 is
Yep.
just not a good research path.
Yeah,
There's so little in Evocation 9. So
unfortunately.
usually it's like the last thing anybody bothers with.
Especially for underwater nation, I feel.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have much more important goals to reach before this.
exactly. Yeah.
Um,
So I've used it quite often, but that's really late game.
it's
Really late
cool
game.
though.
It is. It looks good.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's not really anything else to say. It's a good spell, but not a first priority
No,
Yeah.
and
at all.
at 2 gems, you're probably going to boost yourself to water 7 or something to cast it. So you'll be spamming it forever.
Yeah, the Queens of Elemental Water.
Yeah.
Not be a bad mage. These are all the buff spells that you can find in water. So these are all the cold resistance boosting spells. Um, Cold resistance is important. As you have seen, there are many water spells that don't negate armor or pierce armor, so that makes cold resistance even more valuable because it can like completely shut down those spells. You don't even need very much cold resistance in the first place. Let me swap these around. So
And note as well that that also applies to battle enchants for that do things against cold. So
sure,
that's
sure.
another very good reason to use cold resistance.
Protection from cold is good if you need to get 10 cold resistance on your caster. Winter Ward, it's +5 cold resistance, but it can hit a big 15 AoE. It can very easily hit a massive chunk of your army.
Yeah. It's usually a case of you want to use the biggest one you got the research for.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, if you can cast Frostfend, you should do it. Just
We should note that Frostfend is not a battle enchant in that it puts a tag to each unit so the caster can leave.
sure, if they have to retreat off the battlefield.
Or whatever. If they die, it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean these are good. And also, you can resist fire, so
Yeah.
it's only 5 on a caster, but that's still pretty good against fire stuff at alteration 2. And then alteration
Now,
5. Oh, yeah, sorry.
uh, like really, like resist fire. You'll see probably a lot of thugs or mages casting things like that. Fire resistance, hitting that AOE. Normally, if you're committing to like a battle and you know your opponent is bringing fire in some sort of way, yes, you want to be using your gems, then casting, covering as much as you can. And of course, this goes with the cold spells too that were up there. But I feel like those battlefield wide spells especially into the late game. You're going to be wanting to cast those into anything you run into just in case, just because of how nice having 5 fire resistance across everything is, or 5 cold resistance across everything, just in case. Because if not, you're going to get caught with your pants down, and they're gonna take advantage of you. Okay. And honestly, 2 water gems for every other battle. I mean, okay, good. I would. There's no at no point do you not want resistances on your troops.
Mm.
Right. And note that five resistance is generally enough to stop Horus.
Mm.
So that's also an important thing. One more comment I was going to make is just a generic comment about elemental resistances. Alteration generally will always give you the opposing element,
Mm.
and enchantment gives you your own element. So that applies to all 4 elements. So that comes to when you're planning your research. Are you going to need to fight against similar kinds of things? So then you want enchant, or are you going to be fighting against the opposing? Maybe you want alteration first.
I see.
And I do like that you can still be in the water path and still have just completely water mage and still be able to cast a 100% fire or a battlefield fire resistant spell, and then also a battlefield cold spells. Just being in water just itself still.
Exactly.
Yeah, an alteration
Yeah.
is a very important path for water to go down.
Mm.
Well, a great number of the water nations are also earth nations.
Mm.
So that means Army of Gold and Army of Lead.
Yeah, these
And
spells
ground
are
army.
great.
Yeah.
And at Conjuration 2, you get Summon Water Power, which we've talked about before. You can only use
Yeah.
this if you're actually underwater, which is unfortunate, but I mean, if you can cast it, you probably cast it every single time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty much first buff that comes up.
So I would say this spell is essential if you're underwater, or
I
if
would
you're going to be
comment that
fighting underwater.
this is a mage buff.
Yes.
I
Hmm.
often don't cast it on a thug. A water thug, I wouldn't bother. Even an underwater thug, because usually
Mm,
you've got something more important.
sure.
Yeah, they have such a limited script, and like the difference between the water power and earth power is at least earth power does give you some protection, whereas water power isn't going to give you any buffs as far as your stats go. Is that right? I think so.
Yeah, it gives you a little more cold resistance.
Ah, okay.
The
Mm,
passive for water is cold resistance. The passive for earth is protection.
Yeah.
But earth power gives you reinvigoration, so
Ah,
it's
true.
like I
Hmm.
always cast it. I
Yeah.
always
sure.
cast earth. Water power, no, that's not as important.
At Alteration 4, never mind, we're going back in time. At Alteration 2, you can cast Ice Shield, which only works underwater, but it blocks half of the attacks. It says Protective Force 20, so it's providing you a, like, the actual reduction that you can get is 20 points, but it only works half the time. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
compares to that dancing shield.
Yes.
Sure.
It's the same
Sure.
effect as dancing shield and the air spell, the air earth thing. It's a good spell for a thug.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I wouldn't probably buff it on a on other things.
Um, the worst part about it is that it's only usable underwater.
Hmm.
So when you're going to use this is very limited, but uh, it's all right. I mean, I guess it's RNG, but
Well, it's a combat buff
yeah,
Yeah.
for thugging in water.
it's acceptable. I mean, you're going alteration if you have water, so you'll just
Yeah,
pick this
like
up along the way.
this is a pretty good buff for say a scratty thug that's gonna wear some water breathing and go in the water.
Mm.
True.
You know,
To go to enchantment, at enchantment 2, you get the Breath of Winter. So this is like an AoE cold effect where everyone around you is going to get really sleepy and want to take a nap.
now this spell is an interesting one. Because of this spell, I almost never cast resist cold. I'd rather cast this.
Sure,
Hmm.
because it just does
Gotcha.
the same thing,
The
but better.
only tricky thing about it on your thug is try not to have guys too close to him. Like, don't cast this and
Yeah.
your magi stuck in a blob.
Yeah, you don't want to put your whole army to sleep.
So So a very interesting way, or I guess that I've been playing with the corridor and stuff like that is I've been playing Middle Age Jotunheim, and I've been playing with a Chill Aura Fate. Was it Fate Weaving
Yeah,
Bless?
trade weaving.
Yeah, that's who's I've been playing that, and
Yeah,
I've been
that's
having
fun.
those big Niflheim thugs that you have, and I'll have them do Breath of Winter, and then they'll have their bless on them, being the additional cold and fate weaving, and I have like 26 chill aura, and it's like
Oh,
everything
so
is
it's
crazy.
you're getting the chill to stack with your blessed chill.
Yes,
That's
yes,
something I didn't know worked. I think
and
I'd heard something about that.
yes, and we're
That's pretty huge.
it's the disciples game. It's me and Caleb, and
Hmm.
Oh
but yeah,
man,
it's really interesting, especially with that fate weaving on there. It's pretty cool.
fate weaving is one of the coolest blesses, and with auras, um, but I've yet to really succeed with it.
This is the first time I've ever played with it.
This is a great buff. This is like anytime I have a water thug, this is on the list.
Sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's good on land, good in water. It's all general purpose, super low research.
You can cast it on land. Unlike this spell, you
Right.
can't cast this spell on land. So,
And I'm not sure this one's worth the buff cycle.
um,
If you've
yeah,
defense stacked, yes, but a lot of thugs are going to be harassed, and I'm not
yeah.
sure it's worth the fatigue.
Initially plus
And
It'd be if
five.
they.
Oh, sorry.
Well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say initially plus five defense. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but yeah, all you need is really like three or four militia to just drain your defense to like you'll lose all the benefit this water shield is providing you.
mm,
Well, and you've taken fatigue to cast it.
Right,
Now, hopefully,
right.
you've got fairly high water, but if you're a water one, I don't think this is worth 20 fatigue. And there's a lot of thugs that'll have water one.
Yeah. If you go to 100 fatigue, you will fall
Yeah,
unconscious. So,
yeah.
let's go to back to alteration. So, all water mages in the game at Alteration 2 can cast Quicken Self. So, it only targets themselves. And as it
And
says,
it's,
they can perform one regular combat action twice every turn. So, they can output
but
like double the DPS of someone who is not quickened.
the caveat to this spell is it doubles your encumbrance.
mm,
Because you're attacking twice as much.
yeah.
Any type of quickness doubles your encumbrance.
Mm,
So if you are not better than fatigue neutral, if you don't have enough reinvigoration, you're going to go to sleep.
I see.
So this is a tricky spell to use. It's highly effective, but obviously only a thug's going to use it
Sure.
Hmm.
because it's caster only. And you're not going to cast this on a mage because quickness does not improve casting time.
Right.
Um, so it's a good spell, but you need to build very, very carefully. You got to keep your encumbrance low, got to keep your reinvigoration up, or you'll fatigue out and get killed.
Sure. I mean, it's a tool that you use for the thug kit
Right.
for sure. And
Like I'm just particularly comparing it to Breath of Winter, which basically you can always use.
mm,
This one is more situational.
I like this spell a lot. I think this is one of the best water spells, even if it is kind of situational. It's super easy to
Well,
cast, and you get it super
it's
early.
if you happen to have something with water and is undead, like a specter,
Mm,
this is a great spell.
no, no encumbrance at all.
Or if you've twice born,
Hmm.
like Water Death Nations, this is a
Interesting. Yeah.
great option. Yeah. Can you turn yourself into a white and then you don't care?
I guess we should move on to quickness because it's just the same spell, except now, you hit an AOE. You're not targeting yourself necessarily.
But you don't mind if your troops fatigue out because you're only hitting a few of them. It's only AoE 1. So it actually makes sense to span this all over the place.
Mm.
So it's a little different than Quick and Self.
It's yeah. I also think this is one of like the quintessential point buffing spells. If you have a
Mhm.
thug that has, or even like maybe even a super combatant that has a very important list of 5 spells they must cast. It's not very hard to cast this, only being water 2. You just bring along another mage to stand behind them and cast quickness and then run away.
It does pretty amazing things on my match. It's pretty darn good on Mooch.
Oh, the frog guys.
Yeah, the big
Am I-
frogs. Yeah.
Oh, sure, sure.
that just
And
sounds
it's not a
fun.
bad way to actually make something useful out of trolls.
Hmm.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, quickness is good.
Yeah, it's a good spell. If you could spam it, do so.
At Alteration 4, you get Liquid Body, so you get resistance to all the physical types of damage. And also, you get like wound resistance, affliction resistance. I assume that's what this
Yeah,
+1 wound fend means.
it does. Yeah,
But
which
you do make yourself
hopefully
a
you don't get hit.
yeah.
Like if this is a thug, it's better to not get hit or not
Yeah.
get damaged. Um,
You do reduce your strength a little bit. Sometimes that doesn't matter at all.
it doesn't matter much with, say, a Frostbrand, where
Yeah,
it's the AOE doing the work.
sure.
Yeah.
And the
The one
con
part of this spell I'm not super fond of is the losing combat speed.
Really?
Well, it depends on the kind of thug, but if you're making a thug that you want to get to the back line, this is bad.
sure, sure.
If you're making a thug that's just going to stand there and tank PD,
Then
then this is
it's
fine.
yeah. I would say
Because
it's
like,
even like very good in that situation
Yeah,
specifically.
so it's a really good spell. Overall, though, if I have the option, I prefer Temper Flesh from Earth. And like I've
Oh,
mentioned, there's a
sure.
lot of Water Earth
yeah.
crosspaths.
Sure.
So I'll pick it over this. You know, you've got 5 buff slots. If I've got the choice, I'll take that one. But if I don't, I'll use this one.
It's also nice
Like,
for communions.
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's no reason not to
for
throw
sure.
this on your slaves.
Make your communion slaves super tanky.
Which goes back to Breath of Winter, you got to be careful casting it on your slaves.
Hmm.
It works, but just
You'll
be sure
fatigue
you're
them out.
spacing. Well, you'll fatigue what's around them out.
Yeah.
So but if you also are putting up now, if you've cast the big fire resistance, then no big deal.
Could you kill blood slaves that way?
Yes.
Yes,
Uh,
very much so.
yeah.
Yep.
Try carrying blood slaves with the Byssian guys and watch them all turn on fire and die.
Yeah.
Usually, my solution is only carry 5 and use them up real quick.
Look,
Yeah, auras and blood slaves. Auras and blood slaves are a challenge.
at enchantment 5, you get friendly currents. This spell's great.
Yes,
This spell
this
is
is
like always cast if you're underwater.
yeah, yeah. You mentioned the choice of using the trident instead. So
Yeah.
it takes quite a while to pay for the trident, but there is one advantage: the trident's not vulnerable to gem burning.
True.
Yeah, so if you have this item, the Wave Breaker, it'll cast friendly currents for you if a guy's holding it in battle.
Yeah. Friendly currents is a really effective way to make undead half-ass decent in the water.
Yes. Very
Any
much.
poor amphibians. It's an important buff for poor amphibians. And there's a lot of poor amphibians in the game.
Especially if you're a land nation who's forcing their
That's
way
what I mean.
underwater. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah. For a land nation, like trading for a wave breaker or having a water 3 mage to go along with your undead can make quite a difference to their viability.
Yeah, so friendly currents is great. It's just, I mean, it's a water only spell, but
Yeah.
whatever. At enchantment 6, you can cast Water Ward, which is like the water defense spell, except you hit a giant AoE.
I have almost never used this spell.
Oh yeah, and you can only use it underwater.
Well, and it's a
Mm.
gem. I could be casting
Oh.
an elemental instead.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the
Or
day, it's like
I
you want.
could be putting up some more sharks.
Yeah, like why would you cast this instead of water elemental?
Yeah. But if you did have guys that were highly defense dependent, like underwater cavalry or the
Yes.
equivalent, this would be very good on. Potentially, I could see using it on the merman knights or shark knights or something like that.
Like the
Hmm.
the Morvarks.
Uh,
I
something
mean,
like
they're
that. But there's also the various the guys who ride the
Oh, sure,
centaurs
sure.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the spell suffers from the same +5, like from harassment, just like the other one did before.
Right. But the AoE is really big.
It is quite impressive. Yeah.
I'll make a
Um,
comment on AoEs like this in the 15 and 25 range. I will often split squads and stay in block formation so that I can buff them better.
sure.
Because it's
Yeah.
actually hard to hit line formation with these AoEs.
yeah.
Yeah, something like 60% of the AoE buff is just wasted if they're in a
Yeah,
line,
unless
unfortunately.
you use stacked lines. You can actually use stacked lines,
Oh,
like
sure,
3 lines.
sure.
But anyways, that's just a generic comment about mid-size AoEs. It's not applicable to AoE 1 because they are in ones.
Right, right. Oh, did you want to add anything to that, RCK?
No, no, you're good.
Sorry, I did the thing again where I just clicked off of
No,
it
you're
as soon
good.
as
You're good.
possible. At Alteration 6, it's like Liquid Body, except now it's Area of Effect 5.
This is a good spell.
It
Yeah.
is good, but I almost feel like it's situational between what troops you're casting it on. Because, like, as far as humans go, I mean, you don't want to drop down to 6 strength.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
giants, you cast this on giants all day long.
or wool much.
Yes, yeah,
But
yes,
whatever,
or the
like big honking strong things.
yeah.
Sure.
I agree.
It's not bad on course, man,
Mm, true,
because all they are is just big sacks of hit points.
true.
Yeah, it's a situational spell that you're happy to have. You're going down Alteration anyway, probably.
Well,
But
sometimes all your front line is doing. Lucid talks about this a few times. Sometimes your front line has only one job, and that's just to sit there and soak damage and stay alive.
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
And this is good for that.
and then you have that awkward moment where both front lines have fallen asleep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the last buff spell is Quickening, which is quickness again, except now
But
it's even bigger.
yeah, yeah, and scaling AoE.
Mm,
It's pretty nice.
Yes, yeah,
If a Queen of Elemental Water casts this,
yeah.
it's a
You're looking
pretty
at an
giant.
AoE of 16 or whatever. So,
Mm,
mm,
good spell.
but
okay.
on the other hand, you have to kind of make the thought that okay, this is going to cost me some gems. I could just bring more Water 2 Magi and spam quickening instead, quickness instead.
Sure.
So there's a
For
there's a
free.
there's a mixed decision here.
True.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a Water 2 Mage and you have a Water Gem, why not just cast Water Elemental?
There's that too. Yeah,
Yeah, there's always that.
yeah.
Okay, so I forgot to bring up Freezing Touch, but the spell sucks.
Agreed.
No, it's got the same problem as pretty much all touch spells. You have to
Range
be
one.
right beside the guy, and if you're right beside him, why aren't you just smacking him with your weapon?
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving along to the debuffs. So at Evocation 1, you can cast Slime. So it is a projectile that you shoot out from your hands, but
Yeah,
it does not do any damage to the target. Rather, this is the numbness effect?
uh,
Is that?
it's more just a formation buster. That's probably its best effect. Is kind of like Earth Meld. If you are throwing at the guys advancing towards you, some of them will be left behind.
Mm.
So, like,
Sure.
as an evocation one spell and a water one spell, it's useful. It's not stunningly amazing, but it's useful.
Yeah, I mean, it's only Evocation 1, so. Yeah, I mean, this is not actually not even that bad.
Well, and
It
it
is.
really damages their attack effect.
Right.
defense.
I
So
was
if
just
you
about
think
to say
about it,
that.
yeah, so it's an AoE one version of darkness, and everybody loves darkness.
Oh yeah. And think if these Water One mages are targeting people or enemies in the front line, and then all of a sudden the enemy's front line is taking half to their attack and defense. I mean, that's pretty big.
Hmm. Yeah, it is.
Can make the difference in early
I've
war
seen it chew up elites. Um,
if they fail the MR check.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it works enough if you get enough of it.
sure. At Evocation 2, you get the most powerful water spell, Rain.
And you just shut off all the Fire Nations.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
what it does, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad, but Abyssia gets called out so many times in so many different spells. Like, this one spell will deal with Abyssia.
Hmm.
And I mean, Rain
Or
is.
and a good chunk of what Marinon can do.
Sure, sure.
True. True.
I mean, as you said, RCK, like basically all the Fire Nations dread having rain cast upon them,
Yep.
because it's going to make them less effective and it raises their fatigue cost.
And it's so early.
Yep,
Yeah. Evo 2 is. Whew.
Super easy to cast, super low research.
this spell's fantastic if you
Yeah.
need to cast it.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're not fighting a Fire Nation, there's no reason to.
No.
No.
I'm trying to
No.
think, like, maybe
Because
there's something. There's like a.
no, unlike Mist and Storm, it doesn't help with
Yep.
Oh,
projectiles.
I was thinking, like, isn't there some Mictlan mage that, like, wants to be in rain or something? Maybe not.
Oh, I think so. But I can't think of it right now.
Anyway, yeah, good against Fire Nations, of course. You should always cast it against a Fire Nation.
Yes. Definitely.
Um, and then Alteration 4, you can encase a guy in ice. This is okay.
Yeah, it's another case of if he's got cold resist, it doesn't do a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
But
But it can't
and it's
miss.
no, and it's not great against big strong guys, but it's pretty good against normal strength guys.
You can only
True.
use it underwater, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
so that's highly limiting.
I guess it's similar to those like false fetters or bonds of fire, in that it kind of
Earth
has like
meld.
a condition applied to it. Well, versus earth
Hmm.
meld, which just kind of like goes on its own.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
I
I
think
mean,
it
But
could work.
oh
what do you
sorry,
call that? What's the word for why you put up mines in a battle? It's movement control,
crowd
is what it
control.
is. Crowd control, movement control.
Sure, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's underwater only, but if you need it, if they don't have cold resistance, I guess.
I
Yeah,
mean, it could
yeah.
work well against some underwater cav.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you want to go down alteration probably anyway.
But I'm probably the one that plays the Water Nations the most of the three of us here, and
Yeah,
it's not a spell
probably.
I very often deliberately use.
You'll be proud of me. I'm playing in a game as Yes, and I never play an underwater nation.
Yeah, there you go.
Wait,
Although
doesn't
Is is a really good land nation.
yeah? I
Oh
thought
yeah,
they
yeah. That's
spawned
the only
on
reason
land.
why. No, they spawn underwater.
Oh, well, I see. Oh, sure, right. They want to get on land.
Yes,
Right,
definly.
right.
Yes.
I was thinking like, are they spawn on
Well,
land, but they want to
Morvarks
get underwater?
are much
But
they're much more dangerous on land.
sure, yeah. Also at Alteration 4, you get slow. So it can't miss, but the target does get to do a magic resist negation. I mean, if you hit something important, you want to slow it down.
Well, I would put this into the group of rush defense spells
Yeah,
because this is in
sure.
your alteration research rush you'll probably be doing anyways, and so it fits in there kind of with earth meld and those sorts of things. It's helpful, but it's not a primary spell.
And
Does that?
AOE 1 is pretty good too.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would rate this in with the various. You've got to stop some elite super heavy
Mm.
sacreds. even a little bit of reduction of their attack and slowing them down could make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, you could basically be taking off some of their bless with attack skill -2 or defense skill -2.
Right, right. Yeah, like I was talking about, I was trying to deal with Knights of the Chalice with plus attack and plus defense. Even this little bit might have made some of my stuff hit,
Hmm.
and it'll definitely help water elementals hit.
Oh, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, slow's okay.
Yep.
And then in Enchantment 5, you get a spell that a shockingly tiny amount of nations can actually get away with casting it, but
Well,
without reprieve, I guess I should say, without self-inflicted pain. Um, but it's a nice
so
battlefield
where I
debuff.
yeah, where I use this spell, because it almost always hurts you too. But where I
Mm,
use it is when I'm doing a stacked fatigue play.
Yeah, because that
You use it
encumbrance.
with rigor and with grip of winter or heat from hell, um, and you're doing a stacked fatigue play.
sure,
So you're trying to stack as many sources of fatigue damage as you can, and that is when I will use Quagmire.
sure. It's also
And so,
just a. Oh, sorry.
oh, you're good. You're good. You can talk.
I was just going to say if you're Satis or I think it's Middle
Yes,
Age Zabalba,
Yes.
it's
yes,
just 100% of the time.
Auto include.
There's no downside to it.
no,
It
no,
just makes you, or it just makes the enemy worse and does nothing to you because you have swamp survival.
yes.
Um,
Well, unless except on your bats.
yeah, I suppose. But
It's a good spell.
yeah, it's
Worth
not
casting.
the attack and defense debuff are kind of mediocre, but really the encumbrance penalty is
Hmm.
very bad,
Yeah,
especially if the battle's very long.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And I'd almost say, even if you don't have swamp survival, I mean, like Marilyn said that he'd cast in very fatigue plays. Now, it could also be dependent on what nations you're actually fighting, because nations like really, really heavily armored troops that have very high encumbrance, I mean, adding two more to that, they're going to fatigue out even faster.
Hmm.
Being nations
Yeah.
like Ulm, being nations like Abizia, uh,
Hmm.
that's just kind of almost devastating if they can barely walk up the battlefield before they fall asleep.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's a great example. Like if you're Kalesa, for example,
Hmm.
your guys are all naked.
Sure.
So why the hell not?
True. And you have what, water threes and water fours anyway recruitable?
Easy. They're
Yeah,
cap
you
only,
do.
but they're only two commander points, and I
Yeah.
always buy some of them. Like I go predominantly, say with Kalesa, I go for the Earth, the
Oh
action
yeah.
rather than the Akshini, but I'll mix it up.
Just to have some just in case is always good.
Oh, and of course, Patala, Nagas have swamp survival. So,
Aha, true. I didn't even think about that. Didn't even think about Battalion.
yeah.
Uh, Grip of Winter, it's a lot like Heat from Hell,
Yep.
except it's cold.
Yep.
So this actually, I guess it combos very nicely with Quagmire, as you just said, Marilyn. But
Yeah.
even independently of Quagmire, this spell's great. I mean, if your opponent has zero cold resistance,
Or maybe a Malice like
sure,
Abyssia.
yeah, then it's they'll fall asleep and then they
Yep.
won't wake up.
Yep. Yeah.
Even
It's
even even if the enemy's army is like elite, outclasses yours, if they're not prepared for Grip of Winter, they will lose. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is one of those
And
bombs.
it's stunningly good with undead.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
That rigor
It,
Grip of Winter combo in a cold
oh,
three province. Oh my goodness.
that's ugly. Ugly stuff.
This is one of the most important spells if you're a water nation,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Or cold three nation.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
At Alteration 7, it's the ice spell, except bigger.
Yeah. But guess what? This is also Frozen Heart.
Oh, is it?
Well, Alteration 7. No, and this takes a heftier mage. Um, AoE's not all that big for a gem. So I don't know. Like I can't remember ever scripting this.
Me neither. I mean, I've definitely seen it, but I'm like, I read it, I'm like, It's like
That could have
that.
been a water
It
elemental.
could have been a water element. That's true. Yeah.
Oh,
That's gonna you're gonna have to throw a text overlay
Oh
and
no,
say
what
could
I'm
have been
gonna
a
do
water
what
elemental.
I'm gonna do for the thumbnail is it's not gonna be like the icon of the water drop, it's just gonna be a water elemental
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
thumbnail of the
yeah,
video.
for sure.
That's definitely the meme of today's cast is well, it could have been a water elemental.
Yeah, I mean this spells it's just
I
too
mean,
late. It's too late.
average range, alteration 7 being a water 3 spell that costs a gem. It's just not there for me, you know.
Mm.
No, me either.
At
I did,
enchantment
like I
9,
said,
oh, sorry.
I've played a ton of Villiers, a good bit of Pelagia over the years, lots of Monkey Nations with water, and I just cannot think of a single case where I've scripted that spell.
I've also never cast that spell.
Me neither.
Um, at
I've
enchantment
cast this
9,
one though.
yeah, you can cast the spell.
Oh,
It's good against
yeah, well,
demons.
totally.
It's pretty
Thing
okay
is,
against demons.
yeah, pretty okay. But the trick with this spell is you cast it at the beginning, and it's a fire and forget, and it's just a boost,
Yep.
Hmm.
and that's it.
Especially in the late game when blood becomes very prominent in the game,
Right.
you know.
And there's no save against this either.
Well, and I will mention Enchantment 9 is actually a worthwhile thing to go for a
Oh
few
yeah,
key spells. Whereas
for sure.
Evocation 9 is iffy.
Yeah. Um, the spell's
Because in
great.
Enchantment 9, you're basically going after stuff already. Sorry, I interrupted you there. So
That's fine.
we need
Mhm.
to. I
Go
need to
on.
figure. But like, you're already going after very nice spells anyway. And now that you have Demon Cleansing, it was like, oh well, I have a Water 5. I can just throw this up anyway because it's one gem, and there's no reason not to, especially late into the game.
Mm,
So
Yeah, so
it's great.
it's a very fine spell when you're fighting Blood Nations.
yep. Um, these are all the water global spells. We will start with Maelstrom. This is one of the gem generation spells. It does cost you 80 water gems, but you get 20 gems back every turn after casting it. Um, or
More than
no, you
20.
don't. You get 24 gems.
Yeah,
you get
you get a
24
lot.
gems every turn. So it's a good rate of return. You'll be able to cast water elemental a lot
No, you
after
get more
you.
than 24.
Yeah,
Oh, one. Oh, sorry. One of each other gem type each month. Right. I can read. Um, you get a lot of gems. The spell's
it
fantastic.
it pays off really fast.
Yeah.
Yep.
The disadvantage to it is it's a bit hard to cast at level 6.
And
Not outrageous.
you can only cast it underwater, too.
That too. Yeah. So
In evocation,
what do you guys yeah, Evocation 8 is tough.
Mm.
So
You're
what do you guys think about I personally strategically I tend to barely overcast gem generators if at all. The
yes.
idea being what you want is to profit. So if you overcast, you just slow down your profit.
I want my return back as fast as I can because there's a good chance in the following turn someone's going to try to dispel it or either
Yeah.
cast over it.
Yeah, and I mean, from the perspective of someone trying to dispel, it's such a like a losing game if they're not getting like gems from other players to cast the dispel. It's such like a you put yourself super far behind by doing
Hmm.
that. So I agree. I would also not. I personally don't overcast
I
gem
usually
generators.
overcast by 10 or 20,
Mm,
the expensive ones. And the reason there is it just might stop a cheap dispel.
sure,
And
sure.
that's about it. Or somebody just going, well, maybe it's cast at base and I'll try to overcast. But that's about it. No more than that.
But if mine ever gets like if someone ever overcasted, like took my global in its spot and it's a gem generator, I'm like, I bet you put a lot into that and you can keep
Yeah.
it because he
Yep.
probably
Mm,
just spent I don't know, X amount of turns, probably 10 plus, even more than that turns, waste worth of gems where he could have had that used it, you know?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. There's lots of people have said, you can use gems for combat power later, or you could use them for power now. And a lot of times you're better off with power now.
Yeah, because if not, you'll lose.
Right.
That said, if you let Maelstrom sit and generate, you'll probably win the game.
Oh yeah, they'll definitely out outpower you at
Well,
that point. Or
you know what I most commonly see though in most games is I see people scatter the gem generators, and so everybody tends to have one.
Mm,
Like towards late game, you see that a lot. Like somebody will have fire, and somebody have Mother Oak, and somebody have. So everybody's sort of gaining from it, but
and then you have
it's
some people that have like all of them, and where you're trying your best
wow.
to
Then
form a coalition, and this won't happen.
well, then you know
what a
that
weird
that game's in,
situation you just brought up.
that game's in deep trouble. Oh, you guys in one of those?
We
No,
were.
no, no. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay.
Maelstrom's a good spell.
Maelstrom is a great spell. Preferably you plan for it because it takes some gear and it takes some preparation.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but like well, okay, like almost all the gem generation spells, it's
Yeah.
superb.
Yeah.
At enchantment 7, you get this spell. This
Yeah.
is the bane of water nations, really, or
Well,
underwater nations, I should say.
sort of, except everything's poor amphibian and you could just kill it. I I don't I hardly ever use this spell.
I've ever seen it cast once.
I've seen it cast multiple times. I don't know if that resulted in an effective war. Um,
I'm gonna meme this and say, but you could have put up water elementals.
I mean,
You put up
you're. I
50
mean,
water elementals.
like actually, you're just completely right. Yeah, like genuinely,
Well,
where am I getting a water 5 mage from if I'm a land nation that wants to cast
and
this?
right, and then what the hell are you gonna do against the 50 water elementals coming back at you?
Yeah.
Like what land troops have you got with poor amphibian that are gonna survive even chaff underwater?
Oh.
Maybe
True.
you have a coalition.
I don't know. But
Everyone teaming up to beat down the
well,
110
yeah,
province
no,
underwater nation.
yeah. See, I could see that. I'm surprised maybe they didn't cast it in the tournament finals when they knew they had to deal with Pelagia.
Hmm.
Mm.
But
I wouldn't want to go underwater and fight him though. God.
well, we watched a lot of it, and boy, it was hell.
I think this spell is if you're a land nation, you want to see it get casted. I don't think you want to be the one casting it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I think it's a pretty bad spell. But then you need to jump to its companion spell, and that's why you don't cast this one because what you do is you cast Sea of Ice.
Oh, sure.
You just bury them in the water. See, we did
Hmm.
that in. I did that in my tournament game 13. We stuffed Therados in the water and ignored him for the rest of the game. And we did the same thing with and Kyrios in Mirror All Stars. We all collaborated together, and we just left them to sit in their pond, and that was
I
their
know.
game.
I have seen this cast multiple times before,
Yeah.
and
Totally.
it is definitely better against a lot of nations. Now, relay, they can do some teleporting
Yeah,
shenanigans, but
Hmm.
other than
yeah.
that, this is going to stop most underwater nations in their tracks.
And then they've got to sit there and build up enough gems to try to
Yep.
dispel it and muck. Well, actually, all they can do is dispel it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then they have to find Astral somehow. Yeah. Yeah, this is a devastating spell. If you don't like playing with water nations, just plan to use this. Get some friends, find whoever's got the water magi, feed them your water gems, and hey, let's just shut those guys down.
Yeah, the spell's great.
Yeah.
Um, and this is. We'll do this next. So, Vengeful Water, Thaumaturgy 7. This is a great defensive global.
Mm, 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 mm.
Yeah. You
Um,
see this all the time.
Yep.
man, always somebody puts it, and then they fight over it, and they fight back and forth,
Yeah,
and it gets overcast and dispelled and cast again. It's just never ending because it's just such a pain to fight into.
Yep.
very much.
Um,
It's not a game winner per se, but you end up losing so many little magi and scouts and commanders, and it messes your formations. And
yeah, I don't think it's the best of this type of like defensive global spell, but I mean, it's pretty good, and it's
well,
like,
there's only really kind of three of them I can think of.
What, Wrath of
Uh,
God and
well, no,
Purgatory?
four. Wrath of God, yeah, Purgatory in a way,
Well,
but
for undead, undead.
yeah.
Looming Hell,
Ah, true,
Mm,
true.
this one, and then Dark Skies.
Ah, yeah, Dark Skies, and I love Dark Skies. I didn't even think about it.
Dark Skies
This
is a
one,
much more effective spell because anybody entering your domain is going to run away.
sure.
But this is a very good spell, and it's pretty easy to cast.
But
hmm
it could have been 70
Well,
water elementals.
in this case, I don't think
it
that
might
applies
be
because it
70 water
is.
elementals.
Oh, I've seen this show up with 30 or 40 per turn.
Mm,
Yeah, it
sure.
can get ridiculous, especially if you kind of catch them like in the middle of the war and they're already in your provinces.
Yeah, yeah.
That
And
said,
and if you
though,
have if you have blood sacrifice, this gets even nastier.
oh, sure, to boost the Dominion.
You push your dominion.
Is this easy to cast, though? I mean, you need a water
Well,
7 mage?
I
no,
never said it was easy.
Uh,
I did. I think what I meant is it's not all that expensive, and it's
sure.
gems that you may not need for other things.
Considering what it gets for you, it's a good
Yeah.
price.
Yeah.
But yeah, you do have to boost pretty heavily here. You're not going to have a water seven. Although quite a few people take quite high water for the blast.
Yeah.
Like you see a lot of water six pretenders for defense too.
hmm
You see a lot of them.
Moving along to the level 8s, you can spend 70 gems to reduce income, maybe.
For a water nation, you don't want to cast this. Every other nation, as long as you don't have a lot of coasts, maybe it's okay for you.
I don't think I
Hey,
would ever cast this spell.
me either. Me either. I mean, the research is really high, and you hurt everybody, piss off everybody that might be your
Yeah,
friends.
for real.
And 70 water gems for this? No.
70
Just
water
picturing
elementals.
myself in a giant team game or group game, like ridiculous amount of people. I'm a landlocked nation casting Wrath of the Sea. Yeah, you're gonna get killed.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe in like a Disciples game, if every single nation is on the board, like
Well,
if you have some
one
guaranteed
thing about
friends and you're landlocked.
one thing about disciples games is if you build your team with mixed paths so that each nation has a different set of paths and you search for each other, you could put up globals a lot earlier than you would in a single player game because if I'm the water nation and you're the air nation, well, you give me all your water and I give you all my
Exactly.
air, and you search my lands and I search your lands. Then a spell like this might fly, might fly.
But otherwise, I think this spell is trash.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Garbage.
junk. It's pretty junk.
Um, at Thaumaturgy 8, you can spend 70 water gems to drown people, maybe. Only useful
Yeah, and
underwater.
yeah, and annoy everybody with the coast.
Mm.
But
This is great if
it,
you want to make your nation hated.
but if you're in the water, you might be hated anyways.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
Sometimes
true.
this one's better than and better than some of the others. And I don't know if it would work, but I think this would work if you've been Sea of Iced. You might want
Hmm.
to put this up as a counter to the Sea of Ice.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if that works or not.
I think it should, but it would be worth a test. It's just an example. Other than that, I don't think I've ever seen it used.
Yeah, I've never seen it cast. Actually,
Like if you were underwater nation, you'd really want to be able to push your dominion onto land, and already that's already kind of tough enough.
hmm,
Yeah, it is. There's a couple exceptions. Early age, really, A can buy all those really cheap mothers, Holy
Ah,
Two, and then
true,
preach everywhere.
true.
but
Yeah.
if
But
you, oh, sorry,
yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say if you wanted a defensive water global,
That's
we already looked at one that's a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
better
yeah,
than
yeah,
this like weird thing.
yeah.
And the last global is Guardians of the Deep.
Well,
This spell sucks.
it's
Meh.
like all the other PD creating globals. Do you really need more PD?
No.
Because the problem with PD is the simple issue that a well-built thug can kill unlimited PD no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Like
About that point, you really only need six.
I just bumped up against some 50 plus PD, and I said a thug, and bye bye.
Yeah. It feels so nice when you kill those PD dumps that they put out and like you took no losses.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah. I'm not a fan of any. The only one that's sort of okay, mechanical militia, because they have resist everything. They can be kind of interesting.
hmm.
But other than that, I'm not a fan of the PD globals.
Yeah,
Province
and
defense.
I don't think this one's breaking the mold.
No.
So, and these are the remote spells for water, starting with Scrying Pool. Again, this is one of those spells you cast if you're good at this game.
Yes. This this is an excellent spell.
It's you pay in 2 water gems and you hope the province that you clicked on has a water site on it. Or if you're
No,
just
no, no,
good
no, no,
enough,
no.
you can
This is a scry. This
Oh
isn't a
no,
search spell.
you're
oh,
thinking
right,
of
right, right.
voice.
Sorry,
Voice.
sorry. Yeah. We'll get to
Yeah,
that
this is a
later.
scry. So
Right.
there's there's a couple reasons why I use this. The first one is if you put a scry spell onto a fort you are sieging, you get to see what's inside it.
Mm, I like that.
Yes.
That's
The
true.
second reason is this is a great thing to go check the status of thrones that you can't get a scout to.
Ooh, okay.
Because this
And
is. Oh, sure. Go
it's
on.
also a really useful way to pre-scout a place you want to airdrop onto that you can't get a scout to, or the scout keeps getting killed.
And for
Because
2 gems, oh, just talk, man, talk.
I was no, I'm going to ask a clarifying question.
Okay.
Because this is a scrying spell, but it's only using water, can the mage get like their tether severed and
No, they
become
cannot.
feeble-minded?
Nope.
That's why this is better than the astral one.
I see. I see.
Yeah, it's safe. It's completely safe. And what I tend to do is overcast it by just the estimated time it'll take me to get there.
Hmm.
So if I'm planning to attack a fort and I think it's going to take me 5 turns to get there and siege it, I'll put it up for 7 jumps. That's 5 turns.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
already really like the astral scrying spell, and this is
yes,
pretty cheap.
yeah,
And since it's totally safe,
it's totally
this
safe.
is kind of
And
amazing.
it's gems that you don't need as badly. I mean, pearls are just such a valuable gem.
Right. Well, I mean,
So
this
yeah, I use, but I'm very particular when I use it because I don't want to waste gems on it.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
hopefully you've scouted it first, or it's a throne, or it's a capital.
Or this could be 2 water elementals.
In this case,
It could be
this is
more
better. This is better for the
Yeah,
purpose
sure.
it's used for.
because information is so key in this game.
Yes, yeah. This is a good spell. I use it pretty much every game I have a Water Nation.
Now, the spell that I was actually thinking of in my head, you throw in 8 water gems, and this lets you site search a province for every single elemental type. This is also a spell that you cast if you're good at the game.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Sir Thomas' site searching guide, this is the most cost-effective site searching spell of
Yes.
the game. Remote. its payback is far better than the rest.
Sure,
and
it makes sense. Searching for four different types.
Yeah.
and it's at a very very nice conjuration level, being conjuration 5, and you're already heading to conjuration 5 for water elementals, of course. And it gives you that choice there. Okay, um, we're having a war. I'm using water elementals, or I'm not in a war. I can use my water gems to site search with.
Hmm.
Right. Now, the payback gets a lot worse if you've done some manual searching, and most commonly, water nations will have searched water and frequently earth. Then the payback is not as good, but it's still better than most other remotes.
Yeah.
So I tend to use this on every water province,
Yeah, I guess one of the biggest problems is it can only be used underwater.
Yep.
but it only finds underwater.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I've seen some mod versions of this that do the same thing for Earth, which is
Hmm.
funky.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
they
seems
give them an
really
eight gem
strong.
Earth, but it actually finds, I think, Earth, Death. It's a little bit different, but
Interesting.
it's a national spell for Agartha. I've seen used in mods.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Um, okay, this might have been the spell I was thinking of. I, interesting. Water has two site searching spells. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I don't like. Is there anything
And
more we really need to add to this? It's like,
well, just the generic comment of um, if you want to be super efficient with gem use and searching, remote searching is not terribly efficient. But I will also argue that it does have a certain efficiency for personal micro tolerance.
Hmm.
And if you get to that point in the game where you're just getting kind of fed up of running searchers all over the place for those last two, I'll use remotes.
yeah,
But
fair enough.
the math on it isn't great. None of the remote searches, the math is terribly good.
But if it hits,
Yes. Now,
then
the other comment about remote searches is sometimes there's indications of odd things happening or disease or strange scales. And if you know your sites, you'll know which one to search for.
right.
Then they pay off.
Mm.
Yeah, if you can kind of guarantee that you're gonna land on something that does make it substantially better.
Yeah.
Um, okay, and at Alteration 4, you have a very unique spell where you can target a province, pay 5 water gems to lower the temperature. This is very good if you are
Trying to
trolling
cast the next spell.
If you're trying to
Raga.
cast the next spell, yes.
Well, I was gonna say, like on its own, I guess you can target Raga with it, their capital,
Well, it
if you
hurts
wanna.
their income in a significant way. So as an
uh,
income damager, it's not bad.
Hmm.
it could also be very efficiently used with Grip of Winter.
Hmm. Yes.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
There's an important caveat to this spell a lot of people don't know. It takes effect in the event phase,
Yes.
which is much later than magic phase, so you have to cast it before you want to use the other spell,
Yes. So
at least
all
the turn
make
before.
sure the province is cold before you cast Murdering Winter versus casting Woven Winter and Murdering Winter on the same province in the same turn.
I
That's
see.
right. Yeah, and that's something that's not easily understood,
Nope.
because it doesn't tell you there that it's part of the event phase when temperature changes occur.
Because I think Murdering Winter first in report, and then later down the line you'll have the Woven Winter. And right off the bat, most people probably won't
Oh, oh no, RCK is
Oops.
notice as it get
disappearing.
colder.
Oh,
Huh?
you cut out for a sec, but
Yeah,
you're
you
back.
cut out. What did you just
Oh.
say?
Oh. So but like as you read it in report, some people might not notice that the Murdering Winter report comes in first, and then the Woven Winter one comes in. So that's another
Sure.
way to signify that Woven Winter does happen second. But yes, he is correct about that. And I don't know, you don't want to make the province cold after you've already cast the spell that really makes a difference whether or not it's cold, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
So always
Now,
cast it ahead of time and plan where you think their army is going to move, choke points, especially like Grip of Winter, like places you might be attacking, capitals, uh, for the income decrease for somebody depending on what they are. Other than that, maybe if you're about to storm a fort, you might as well be casting Woven Winter if you want to fight in Cold 3, if you're a Cold 3 nation. Of course, you don't want to fight in a different temperature scale.
Yeah, so this is a late age Atlantis handy spell
Oh,
because you
yeah.
always want everything as cold as possible for your ice clads and stuff.
yeah, Woven Winter situationally super useful.
Yeah.
Also very useful with Murdering Winter, where you hit a province and you kill everything in it. Maybe.
Well, this is where you punish people who doom stack.
Yes.
Right. The
This and
more.
Flames from the Sky, which you probably already discussed.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's very effective the colder the province is,
Hmm.
and the more troops are in, the more that you'll end up hitting.
Yeah.
So,
So
It's ex-
actually,
and if they have no cold resistance, they're dead
yeah,
yeah,
if they're a
sure.
human,
yeah, because
or
it's
depending
armor
on the cold.
negating.
I actually just cast this the other day and I killed 400 to 500 troops. I mean, yes, it was
Wow.
Yeah,
Pangea. A lot of them
yeah.
are free spawn, but that's still a pretty heavy hit. Hopefully killing some dryads while I was at it, but I'm not sure if those got killed.
Well, there's a chance. That's for
Yeah.
sure. It's a very, and you see it used all the time in late game.
Hmm. And it'll just clear out chaff in somebody's army.
And this is something to really be worried about if you see Maelstrom up,
Sure,
Oh,
sure.
because that means he can generate the gems for it every 2 turns, plus his site search
yeah.
generation.
That's when it gets scary. When they have a consistent casting of Murdering Winter over and over again, it just kind of wears you down.
Yeah, I mean, probably the best defense is keep your army split until you need them.
Hmm.
Like, don't over concentrate your researchers in one place or your troops in one place or whatever.
But if you see your opponent doing that, go ahead
Boom.
and kill him.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
And finally, at Evocation 9, your capstone spell for water, Tidal Wave.
This is an awfully expensive unrest spell. Although 30% population is significant,
Ooh.
but that's a high cost for an unrest spell, and a tremendously high research.
Yeah, I mean,
If I were to cast it, it'd probably be hitting a very high population province.
Yes, yeah,
maybe.
and then you want to consider the other unrest spells you could have done, like Blight is significantly cheaper if you've got the cross path or Hurricane, or it just depends on what you've got.
Just cast Black Death. That's all you need.
Yeah, Black Death is the big one.
Yeah,
Although 50 unrest is at the very high levels. So to shut down a capital only recruitment. I have a
and
little anecdote. I don't know if you guys saw it, but we had a duel. Balls was playing, um, it was Pangea and he was Zabalba.
Mm.
And what he did is he did Raid of Toads and Wrath of Pazuzu multiple times on the
Ooh.
capital of Pangea, and that was the end of the duel. The duel ended. He racked up the unrest to 400.
wow.
No
Hmm.
more wasted
Oh.
doors. Yeah, that was game over.
I don't think Tidal Wave is a good spell.
No, no, it
No.
only works on coasts and it costs a lot. And
At
the
Evo
research,
9.
yeah, no, no. In the world of unrest and economic damage spells, it's not a good one.
And okay, I missed the Frost Dome. This is an interesting dome.
Well, the domes don't really fit with any of the other categories very well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
They're kind of unique.
Um, it's not only a trap dome, but it's also a protection dome. So it's like a mix of the two types.
And just reading it, I think, unless I've forgotten, this one you don't have to add extra gems to keep it up.
Hmm,
But I could be wrong there. Does it say?
I don't know.
No, no. The more gems you put in, the longer it will last.
Ah,
So I was wrong. Sorry.
Whatever, it's fine.
But personally, if you're doing a dome defense, stacking various types of domes is generally your best bet.
Sure.
hmm.
So you want to use whichever ones you can get.
Yeah, I mean, on its own, the Frost Dome it's okay,
Yeah,
sort of.
30% isn't a heck of a lot, but
If you stack
and
that
of
with the
course,
Air Dome,
yeah, exactly.
then
We and I believe you can still stack air domes, so you can have multiple up.
And you can stack aerodomes, really?
Well,
Interesting.
you used to be able to. I
Maybe
haven't
you can. I
cast
don't know.
any in quite a while, but because
Yeah.
they last forever, but they have a 1 in 5 chance of cracking. Um,
Ah,
I would, you'd have to test it. I'm pretty sure they still do stack.
interesting.
I have a Dome
The other
video.
types, you can only have one of each.
You can watch the Dome video, I suppose.
Yeah, you could do a dome video, but you'd want to put up a test game and try some crazy
Mm,
Oh,
stuff.
he's got a dome video.
I do, yeah.
What do you do?
It's
Oh,
very
okay.
old, and I'm sure I got something wrong, but I do talk about every single one.
Yeah. Anyways,
Um,
it's a fine dome.
yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And that is every single water spell that is generic in Dominions 5. Um, Conjuration is the best. Alteration is good. Evocation has some, some stuff, but I don't like it.
Enchantment has some very important stuff.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I
Enchantment's
agree.
definitely very good. And Thaumaturgy, I was actually kind of surprised. I learned some spells that are actually pretty good, I think, that
Yeah.
I didn't
So it'll
respect
depend on.
before.
I mean, it'll depend on your nation, what your other paths are, whether or not thaumaturgy is in your priorities. If you're Rillier, of course.
Mm, no. I think overall, water probably better than fire, or at least I like it more than fire. Um, Definitely not as good as air, but that's just
Well, I
my
think
opinion. What do you two think?
Well, I think the one thing about water is, as we've kind of noticed, it has a little bit more variation in damage types,
hmm
and that gives you a little more flexibility. And it's one of the better buff paths,
For sure.
like
Yeah.
for thug buffs. Thug buff, your best thug buff paths are earth, water, and nature.
Yep, without a doubt. I suppose my feeling on it then is just that water like if you want water for thug buffing, you just don't need high water, really.
Yeah.
Like the
I
higher
would,
your water gets does not necessarily translate to a equal level of water power.
what's funny about this one is 2011, I wrote a guide that is the same as this,
Hmm.
which is what's good about water.
Mm.
I see.
And that's back on the old Dominions 3 wiki. So, because at the time, a lot of people said, well, water's just terrible. And I said, well, it's not amazing, but here's all the good stuff you can do.
There's
hmm
definitely some excellent spells you can do with water.
Yeah.
You kind of opened my eyes about the scrying pool. It's just not a spell I haven't used very much, and it's interesting the way you used it. And yeah, used it ahead of time, keeping eyes on caps and thrones. I do like that. That was something that I kind of took away from this.
Yeah,
Well, and
same.
getting that scout report from what's inside,
Yes, that too.
and that applies to all forms of scrying, whether or not it's the national site for Agartha or it's the astral scrying spell. All forms of scrying give you that.
But I really like that it's safe. You can't get your
Yeah.
mage killed. Like
Exactly.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
What would you two rate water?
I would rate it as a favorite.
That's because he always plays the Water Nation.
No, but I play a lot of water crosspath nations,
hmm
and I have a lot of fun with it.
I mean,
I'd rate it kind of
as like a score, like a B, C, D.
Sure.
Marilyn can go first.
Uh, I think I'd give it a B.
Yeah, I feel the same way too.
I mean,
Wow.
the A tier, the S tier for me is blatantly obvious. It's Astral in Blood.
I almost say water's like C. Okay, I'm dropping water a
Oh,
little bit lower on this one.
wow.
Yeah,
I have actually
yeah.
come around to water after doing this video. Like, I probably would
It's
have
in a,
also rated a C.
but I think we'd have to do a tier list because
Mm,
it's going to depend on where you put Earth.
Sure,
mm,
Um,
sure.
because buff wise, Earth is the best for army
yep,
buffs.
Yes.
great.
But this
Um,
is the water video, so.
yeah. But
Uh,
anyways, it would be somewhere in there if I was to tier it. Probably a B. I could see the definitely. I could agree that drop it a bit.
I
The only
think,
way to get a clear answer on that would be to kind of do the comparison of all the paths.
sure.
Yeah.
In a vacuum, I think I can make the bold statement that it's worse than air, better than fire. In a vacuum. Assuming
Yeah,
you have nothing else at
Yeah.
all
Okay.
to contribute, which is, of course, not
yeah.
realistic. You surely have other things, but.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, that's the end of the water video. Thank you for sticking around. If you've been watching for over 2 hours and 20 minutes, uh, we've been recording for a lot longer than that, or rather, we've been talking for longer than that. But so
We're on
much,
3 hours now, but
yeah.
that's not all that much dead time.
Mm. Well, thank you, RCK and Marilyn, for joining me. I will link your YouTube channels in the description. Please go subscribe to them if you haven't already.
Well, I have. Or are you talking to the audience?
I'm talking to the audience, yes.
Yeah, I subscribed to you the other day, Panic. I was like, why am I not subscribed to him? I thought I was.
Well,
Apparently,
I
wait.
does
that.
mean you're a subscriber.
Oh yeah, no, I know that. Um, oh, I didn't know who you were. I'd never found your videos before, so it was good that you found me.
Jesus.
Um,
Well, no, but I made this comment before. I don't actually watch Dominion's videos.
yeah, see, I'm the total opposite. There was a great comment someone left on one of my videos where they said like, "Oh, I watch more Dominions than I play." It's me totally, for sure.
Yeah, see, the main reason I don't watch them is I do Dominion so much that when I'm using YouTube or TV, I want to do something different.
Sure, sure.
I'm almost at that point too, because I'm always doing something Dominions otherwise. And yes, I will watch videos from time to time, depending on what it is. Like if it's informational videos like this, I'll probably watch it.
Yes.
Mm,
If it's um about nations or if it's certain things, I'd probably watch it. But as a straight like series, I might watch a little bit. Definitely gonna watch the tournament whenever it finishes. But
Yeah, if it ever
but
does.
like as far as the series goes, I probably don't watch them as much anymore.
I'll watch a little bit of a Let's Play series, just sort of peak moments,
Hmm.
but but they take a lot of time, and yeah,
as it stands, I'm
it's
still sucked into it. But that's gonna be the end of this video.
all
Thank you all
right.
for watching, and thank you
Thanks,
too
Panic.
for yeah.